Stage 1 of the Tour de France saw crashes and carnage spoil the sprinters' fun. But Stage 2 proved even more destructive as the chaos continued and took its toll on the contenders. Andy Schleck fell victim to a nasty crash, but rallied his Saxo Bank squad to finish the day. While Americans Tyler Farrar and Christian Vande Velde both fell victim to falls, and Christian saw his tour come to an unexpected end. Lance Armstrong and Alberto Contador were also caught out in the confusion, reminding the riders that the first week of the tour could just as well be their last. Emerging as the beneficiary of the bedlam, Sylvain Chabanel not only took the stage, but also the yellow jersey. The cobblestones of Stage 3 promise plenty more mayhem. It's all up next on Versus. Today is not a day for the faint of heart. The cobbles can destroy your body and mind, not to mention steal your soul. The roads made famous by the classic Paris-Roubaix now play host to many men who've lost sleep thinking about this route. And we await them all just outside the Arenberg forest. Stage 3 was supposed to be the highway to the danger zone, but yesterday brought a myriad of crashes, and it hit Garmin Transition the hardest. 5 of Jonathan Vaughteur's riders hit the deck during Stage 2, the worst of which were Christian Vande Velde and Tyler Farrar. Vande Velde, after going to the hospital, has found out that he broke 2 more ribs. He is out of the Tour de France, and he can only wonder what could have been. Meanwhile, for Tyler Farrar, a broken wrist, but he's decided at this point to soldier on, and at the hospital he spoke with Robbie Ventura.
Not dead.
Rough day on the roads today, Tyler. Can you tell us what your condition is and what's it look like for tomorrow?
Yeah, certainly not the best day I've ever had on the bike. I'm pretty banged up, but nothing's too badly broken. I may have a small fracture in my wrist, but it's not completely apparent. And either way, I can take the start tomorrow and see how it goes. It's probably not going to be fun, but yeah, we'll see if I can get through or not.
With the cobbles, with all the bumping, are you going to take any special stuff taped to your bar, anything to help reduce that shock a little bit, or are you just going to tough it out?
We'll see what we can come up with the mechanics, and I'm sure we'll tape it up like crazy for the race. But, you know, it's going to be touch and go. If I can, you know, bear it through the stage tomorrow, we'll just have to wait and see how painful it is.
You looked a little down after the race. Can you tell us about the fall and exactly what you were feeling after the stage?
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised by the X-rays. I thought my arm was, I was pretty sure my arm was even worse. It really hurt bad. I basically rode the last 30K one-handed. But yeah, once once you get off the bike and can rest a little bit, you know, it wasn't quite as bad.
Well, good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Clearly a very disappointing day for Garmin Transitions. They lose their overall rider and their best sprinter, one of the best sprinters in the business, now really banged up.
Oh, absolutely. A very tough day for the whole peloton. Almost everybody came off on that big crash leading up to Spa, and I think that Tyler Farrar would be commended to carry on, and just to start would be a major accomplishment. And I wouldn't be surprised if that once he got started and got close to the cobblestones, he'll be close enough to the finish line that he'll be able to soldier on. But we will see. Time will tell. It depends on how rough that break or supposed break was to his wrist.
We welcome you once again to our Cadillac pre-race show, along with Bob Roll, the man who has ridden, bled over, and tasted these cobbles on countless occasions. I am Craig Hummer. This is one of those days where if you're watching at home, you don't want to turn off the TV, do you?
No, most definitely. This is going to be one of the hardest stages in the first week of the tour since the race began about 100+ years ago. So it's a very tough stage for the riders today. I think all of the people watching will be relishing it, but a lot of riders will really fear this stage, especially the more climber-oriented type of athletes.
Let's go straight to the highlights from yesterday, where it was crashes abounding. We start off, this was the Stocco, the second to last summit that they would reach, a Category 3 climb. Coming down would be when the crashes would happen.
This is Gavazzi from the Lamprey squad going down, and then the motorbike having a tough time staying on the road right there. And then the motorbike even crashing as well. But hot on his heels was the whole peloton charging down that wet, slick, serpentine descent. And you see what the carnage was. I think about 15 guys from the front, the riders started to fall. And when the whole field comes down, you have chaos.
Andy Schleck, of course, Saxo Bank's main GC contender. He would go down. The green jersey of Alessandro Patacchi would be caught in the melee, as was Andy's brother, Frank. Saxo Bank took a lot of hits on the road, just like Garmin Transitions. It was just absolute carnage. That's Matty Breschel finally saying to Andy Schleck, take my bike, mate. You can move ahead.
Quick bike change there, and Andy Schleck was able to get back on his machine. They got it all fixed up. Here's Lance Armstrong. He also had to come back after falling over in that big crash.
Lance involved in the crash, the #1 on the back of the Astana jersey. That's Alberto Contador, the defending champion. He also would go down. The biggest beneficiaries, the quick step in front, that's Sylvain Chavanel and Jurgen Rollins. Finally, Chavanel would say, I'm going to go the rest of the way by myself.
Jurgen Rollins struggling to keep the wheel of Sylvain Chavanel. Just a few months ago, he crashed on these very same roads and broke his cranium. So a huge comeback, and he had a lot of motivation to do well on this stage, but I don't think he could have dreamed that it would go this well.
He wins the stage, but more importantly for any Frenchman, he puts on the yellow jersey at the end of the day. Celebration all around for the Quick Step team. They came into this tour with a lot of questions. Meanwhile, Fabian Cancellara, he took control on the roads. He stopped everyone else that was behind those two and said, guess what? To the commissaires and to the riders, we're just going to go in easy.
It's not really what we call protesting, but they did neutralize the aggression that would have inevitably happened in the finale of the stage. That gave a chance for all the GC riders to catch back up and finish in this main group together, and they'll start the aggressions again on today's stage.
Contador skidded on the road a bit, but all in all, he said he was fine, but not the same could be said for Christian Vande Velde there on the far hand right of your screen. Very banged up, the blood coming down off of his left eye, and even further behind was Tyler Farah.
Tyler Farah, they're back at the back of this little group here, nursing in that really damaged arm of his, but he did get to the finish line and will fight again today.
This is the notable injury list after stage #2. As we've mentioned, Christian Vande Velde is now out of the tour for Garmin Transitions. 2 more broken ribs. He already had 3 when he started the tour. Tyler Farah, a broken wrist. Lance Armstrong, abrasions. Contador, abrasions, as are most of the GC contenders. Robbie Ventura caught up with Julian Dean at the end of the stage.
I'm out front of a hospital in Liège, and we're here with Julian Dean, a couple of teammates inside. How you feeling, bud? And what happened out there?
It's just tough times for the team, a hard day for the team, you know. I'm okay. The other guys are still in there getting checked out. So, yeah, just try and think about tomorrow and see if we can get back into it.
How do you get the morale back up after 3 of your biggest hitters here on Garmin Transitions go down?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to think about that on the way back to the hotel. But, you know, that's a tour. You know, it's incredible like that, and it's incredible what athletes can get out of themselves. And, you know, we'll try and see, you know, if we've got something to get us through the next few days and try and get patched up as we go along.
Can you tell us what your injuries are and where they're at right now?
I just had like pain in my back and pain in my ribs, and you know, just to eliminate any discontentment in my mind, they just sent me here to get me checked out, but I seemed all okay.
Thanks, Julian. Good luck.
All right, thank you.
We should make note of the area's most famous landmark, the coal mine behind us. A lot of riders, Bob, are going to have to dig deep today, but why neutralize the finish yesterday?
Well, you don't want the Tour de France to be over in the first week of racing, especially when it's not what we would call a strategic point in the bike race. This way, they neutralized it because they realized Andy Schleck was a long ways behind, Lance Armstrong, Alberto Contador, all of the big overall contenders. And so for the riders in the front group, which was a very select number of guys, 15 or 20 guys, to race from there to the finish line, they would have had such a huge advantage over the majority of the field. The Tour de France would have been a very different bike race. Cadel Evans not falling in that crash, he would have gone through. So if everybody started attacking, he would have benefited the most. However, with every team in the bike race has team riders down, especially their team leaders, they're going to wait for them no matter what is going on strategically. So in that way, to neutralize the riding all the way to the finish line, we have a much better Tour de France for the next couple and a half weeks.
And afterwards, all the riders who finished behind Sylvain Chavanel said chapeau, or congratulations to him. He absolutely deserved the win and therefore deserved the yellow jersey. For the first time in his career, he wears the maillot jaune.
This is the first yellow jersey he's ever won as a bike racer, and you can't take anything away from the efforts he put in. He was in the breakaway throughout the day. He dropped all 7 guys that were with him. That's an impressive feat. The last one holding on was Jürgen Rollins, but he dropped him as well. So he moves way into the lead for the yellow jersey. He's not a great rider, not a specialist anyways on the cobbles. It might be only one day in yellow.
This is how the overall standings look now, with Chavanel on top in yellow. Cancellara drops to second, 2 minutes and 57 seconds behind. And then the list is the same as it was before yesterday's stage. Tony Martin sits in third, keeping point. Lance Armstrong in fifth. He now still is the top one of the general classification contenders.
And this is mostly from the results of the prologue time trial a few days ago. Alberto Contador, he's still up there in the same gap to Lance Armstrong. That's the most important time that we need to know about. Fletcher, good chance for today's stage. Frank Schleck, ways down. Andy Schleck, Dave Zabriskie, George Campy, and Tyler Farah. Tyler obviously a long ways down from where he was at the start of yesterday's stage.
A lot more to come here on our pre-show. And wait a minute. Oh my gosh, there they go, wandering off again. We'll try to corral our British colleagues when we come back.
The 2010 Tour de France pre-race on Versus is presented by Cadillac.
These are the stones made famous every April during the Queen of the Classics, Paris-Roubaix. 8 miles total. Of the final 20 miles of the course, 6 of them will be the rough stuff. Welcome once again to our Cadillac pre-race show. It's now time to welcome in our connoisseurs of the cobbles, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin. Guys, after what we saw yesterday, how eager are the general classification guys, the overall contenders, going to be to stay at that front and out of trouble?
Well, they've no choice. They know now they must be at the front if they're going to survive a bad stretch of road, especially over those last 20 miles of racing today. And people like Contador have never faced these cobbles before. Clever people like Armstrong know what they're all about.
I think the most important thing to retain here really is the fact that whenever I've seen a race in the past where there's been somewhat of a truce, the bike riders have come out the next day and put in a sterling effort and made an incredible race. And everybody, and I think Bob will agree with me, everybody has put a cross on stage number 3 because they realise how important it's going to be. It's going to be a humdinger.
A Lollapalooza, a peach, a dizzy, a wowzer. It's going to be a great stage. And I think when you have a big crash like that, it increases the level of nervousness within the pack, especially for a strategic stage like today. And the battle for position is going to be as hard as the stage win, and perhaps we could see the end for a lot of GC contenders on today's stage if they don't make those selections across the stone roads.
Absolutely.
When these roads are ridden in April in the Queen of the Classics, it's called the Hell of the North. Well, we could see just that out there today. Let's take you right now to our Radio Shack route. Paul, you've been over these roads a number of times.
Well, certainly the riders have got a bit of a taste of 2 cities really today, because they start at the bottom of the Mur de Huy, which is the start really of the Flèche Wallonne race, and actually just as you move away from there, it's the small town of Wanze. It's a little bit lumpy to begin with as they move away from the Ardennes, leaving the Ardennes behind them. There's a small sprint and a 4th category climb early on, but this stage number 3, is basically what we've been talking about. Going down to Arenberg or the Porte de Hainaut, it's all about, okay, it looks flat, but it's the cobblestone sections, those little black spots all the way along the route. That's where the race is going to be extremely hot.
That's your Radio Shack route. Now time, Phil, for our SunGuard stage facts.
That's right, as Paul said, we'll leave Wanze for the official start, heading to the Porte de Hainaut at Arenberg, the town of Arenberg, which is all a bug today, I must say. 132 miles, that's the distance to LA to San Diego. First visit to Arenberg. We've passed through it plenty of times on Paris-Roubaix. 7 sections of I think that's what's very, very important. There will be an early morning breakaway. but I think that the big favourites will look to each other. One makes a move, they all must make a move.
You guys haven't asked me yet why I'm smiling so broadly this morning. It's not because of the next part of the segment we're doing. It's because I actually rode the final 3 section of cobbles this morning with our producers, and I survived.
And you're smiling. I thought you were false teeth.
No, actually, look at his hands a little bit more close. There's a couple of bruises on there. I didn't notice.
Couple scraps, couple scrapes, but it's all good. It was a lot of fun. I highly recommend it to anyone if you're here in this area. But let's get to our Cadillac
I highly
prediction
recommend that you don't ride them unless you're getting paid to do it.
Good job.
Another opinion, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So we go to our Cadillac performance predictions. We'll check in on the score of late. None of us got points yesterday, so the scoreboard stays the same. I still lead with 5. Phil still on the board with 2. Paul and Bob trying to get it going. So
I think you boys have got a little bit of a problem because Bob and I are actually currently being very, very consistent.
Yes,
you are.
A bit like England.
You've gotten an A for consistency. So guess what? The 3 of us, all hail Phil.
Yes.
All hail Phil. You finally get first pick. Congratulations.
Yes, and I just want to emphasise how extremely lucky Craig is to still have that yellow jersey. If we hadn't had that ridiculous go slow towards the finish yesterday, Torhushoff would have won, and he's absolutely fuming, by the way. He wasn't part of the strike that they had. He would have won the stage, and I would have been in yellow tonight. So I'm staying with Tor. I've got great confidences. Absolutely none, but today I'll get all the points that are required. I've had him for 3 days now. He didn't let me down the first day. He wouldn't have let me down the second day. Today, he'll probably win this stage.
I think it's against the rules to pick the same riders. Same
I didn't
riders.
make the rules. I only live with them. You guys made the rules.
Well, according to Phil, we can write a new rule so that
As
doesn't
you do,
happen.
as you do on most
later,
days, yes.
Later on in the tour. So. Phil has his opinion. We'll all have ours. My opinion is that this is a day for the Argentine-Spanish rider Juan Antonio Flecha. He's a man who loves these cobbles. 3 times on the podium of Paris-Roubaix. He was 3rd this year, 2nd in 2007. What I'm hoping to see at the very end of the day is his signature salute, the arrow, as he comes across the line. So, who are you going to go with?
It will not be the arrow, believe me. I can't believe you guys have forgotten Spartacus.
Swiss position.
Switch position?
Precision.
Oh, precision. Precision. Okay, Fabian Cancellara. He went so fast over the cobbles this spring, they thought he had a motor in his bicycle. He didn't have a motor in his bicycle. It's in his legs. He's going to demolish the field on today's stage and get me some points. 4 points. Come on, Fabian. Just do a little bit. I mean, if he goes at half speed.
Excellent. You're all very, very logical. You've all done absolutely superbly. I'm going to take Bob's Book of Logic here. There's the Book of Logic.
It's pretty thin, actually.
Throw it away. And you know who's going to get me some points today? Maybe he won't win, but today is going to be a day when Lance Armstrong is going to try and lay down the foundations for his victory. He might not win the stage, but if the race splits up towards the end and there are 5, 6, 7 riders going clear, Mr. Armstrong is going to get up there. Might not win, but he'll get me a few points.
I wish we had a close-up on Bob just then when you said Lance, because he sort of started thinking, were you thinking that maybe that's a good pick, or were you shaking your head like...
I was thinking like, wow.
And that,
I was thinking that was a
everyone,
pretty good pick.
is why we play the game. Hopefully you're playing along at home as well. By now the riders have powered down their breakfast. They're fully fueled to attack the task at hand.
The 2010 Tour de France pre-race on Versus is presented by Cadillac.
Today we say goodbye to Belgium, but it won't be an easy exit for the riders. Before hitting the open roads of France, many may be hitting the ground. There'll be no smooth sailing over pavement, just rough and tumble cobblestone. Normally safe for one-day classics, the Tour de France is throwing its honoured guest a curveball. You either love the cobbles or you hate them. There is no in-between. It's pure pain as the pure pave wreaks havoc on every bone in the body. The overall contenders know the Tour can't be won today, but it certainly can be lost. Lance Armstrong and Alberto Contador have been preparing for this very stage for months to keep their chances of a podium in Paris alive. The pressure cooker that is the Tour de France is sure to blow as Stage 3 greets the riders with a fresh round of antagonism. Next on Versus. After Rotterdam, we went to Belgium. Now we're headed to France. The Tour de France will get battered on the cobblestones we call the Hell of the North. This is a unique stage, a speciality of the Tour de France. Many of the riders don't like it, but the crowd in Arenberg, they are waiting with anticipation. Hi everybody, welcome back to the Tour de France. We're very excited today. I'm Phil Liggett, this is Paul Schoen. We are going into hell today over the sectors of cobblestones, and as I say, many of the riders there really are not looking forward today. In fact, the peloton itself after yesterday's bashing looks more like it's going to the outpatients of the local hospital than to the ride into the hell. Paul, it is a very special day, and Lance Armstrong, and like everybody else, have been looking forward to, but this is the day we have talked about since the Tour route was announced.
Yes, we have, because we realise it's not very often that the Tour de France decides to put cobblestones into a stage of the Tour de France. This year they've included it. That's why I think everybody talked about it. There are specialists riding over cobblestones, but men who like to climb high in the mountains usually are not very good on those kind of roads.
Well, I can remember going back 7 years, meeting Lance Armstrong on the cobblestones of the Hell of the North, and he said, boy, I love these cobbles. And in fact, this year he's trained specifically with the cobblestones in mind. And I think, Paul, Lance Armstrong must try and take time today.
Well, you know, he's the kind of rider who invests time and money in meticulous preparation. That's why in the early part of this year, in April, he came down here and he rode the cobblestones to see whether or not he could get back to the kind of position he needed. But not only, Phil, did he actually train on the cobblestones, he decided to come out and race over them as well. And he raced one of the most difficult races in the world, the Tour of Flanders, and he finished there in 27th place. But compared to Armstrong, the man who we're talking about, Alberto Contador, you know, he's never actually raced on a cobblestone surface.
Alberto Contador, though, has trained on them, and he actually went to see Peter van Petegem to help him with the practice of training on the cobbles. And if you don't remember Peter van Petegem, he's a winner of the Paris-Roubaix and he's a winner of the Tour of Flanders. What a great way to learn from the master.
Well, one of the great specialists, definitely, but I still believe, Phil, there is a slight difference between training over these surfaces and actually racing over them. Completely different reactions, because when you're going around those corners and at speed, it's a completely different reaction.
And also, Paul, it's not just racing the cobbles themselves. The actual race to the cobblestones can be very interesting indeed, as they try to be in the right position as they enter these alleys of pure stone. All right, well, a lot of people in the Tour de France have had experience on the cobblestones, and they know what it's like to reenact it, and the teams are specialised. Look at this. These guys have been on the podium in the Paris-Roubaix. We all saw Cancellara win it so well this year.
Well, certainly he was a dominator this year, and he's won it on 2 occasions. Thor Hushovd, he's tried to get onto the podium in the past. Juan Antonio Fletcher, he's extremely experienced. He rides for Team Sky. And don't discount, of course, George Hincapie. Hincapie finished second in 2005, but I have a feeling, Phil, that this year Hincapie may well have to look after his own teammate, Cadel Evans.
And take a look at this. 102 of the 198 starters today have ridden over the cobblestones. 74 of the 102 have managed to finish over the cobblestone classics, and 35 of the 102 have only ridden on 1 occasion. These are amazing statistics. Brad Wiggins down the bottom there has ridden Paris-Roubaix on 5 occasions when he was a member of the French team Cofidis. So let's remind ourselves what happened right out at the start today. We're in Belgium, remember. Alessandro Bertacchi in the green on the left. The yellow jersey being carried into France by a Frenchman. That makes something of a change. And Sylvain Chavanel winning the lead yesterday. Rolling out here from Wanze, bound for the Hell of the North, Paul. This was the start. As always, very quick. Very quick indeed.
As soon as the neutralised flag goes in, these guys want to get out and get into what we call the early morning breakaway. It's so important to look for that breakaway. And finally, once they got to the first sprint point of the day, a breakaway had established itself.
And in the breakaway, Roger Kluge was going over the front. As you can see, it wasn't really a sprint. Ryder Hainaut, the Canadian rider, in second place, and Steve Cummings, he was in third, the British rider. There are 7 riders clear now. They got away after 13 kilometres. They're still clear, by the way, when we get to the live pictures. This is the only climb of the day, 4th category. Hainaut getting the points ahead of Cummings, and Auger in 3rd place there.
Well, the result of that King of the Mountains not at all, Phil, going to affect the overall standings in the King of the Mountains. Jérôme Pinot, the teammate of Sylvain Chavanel, will not be threatened on this very flat stage.
Well, Chavanel saying he's going to try and lead this race all the way to the Alps next weekend. Let's hope he can. It's a tough call, I think. Lance Armstrong looking very good, but he's a little bit patched up here because, like so many riders, he was sitting on the floor at some stage yesterday on the descent of the Stocker. The champion here of Luxembourg, Andy Schleck, he had a real bashing yesterday. I really thought he'd hurt himself too seriously to continue, but there and prepared to ride again as he makes his way through in the peloton at the moment. Oh, these beautiful pictures we pan around France and Belgium today are brought to you in high definition. And today we'll be onto the cobblestones. The riders will not want too clear a view of the ride on the cobblestones, I wouldn't think. The weather, though, it's a beautiful day here. We're sat in France, of course, at the finishing line. 63 degrees, going to get warmer when the riders get to us. Forecast is cloudy, but at the moment we have lovely sunshine. Sadly to say, yet again, Christian van der Velde leads a major race after the crash yesterday this time. By now he must have broken every rib he has this year. He crashed and broke ribs in Italy, he crashed and broke ribs in Switzerland, and now he's done it here in France. Nicky Terpstra, no injuries for him, suffering from a fever sadly, and so he wasn't allowed to start by his team today. So that means 191 riders line up for hell today. 15 of the 22 teams, and these are quite amazing statistics, are still intact. Normally we have 22 teams out of 22 intact at this stage of the tour.
Well, it's not a major surprise, Phil, because we did expect the first 3 days on the open road of the Tour de France this year to be dramatic, and I don't think anybody would dispute the fact that it has been extremely dramatic with crashes on stages 2, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of drama on stage 3 as well as these riders start to pick up the pace heading down towards the finish line near Arenberg. Well, 7 riders leading this race. The 7 riders got clear after 13 kilometres, again after a very aggressive start.
Here's the names for you. Steve Cummings of Team Sky, Ryder Hagedal of Garmin Transition, Pavel Brut of Katusha, Roger Kluger Milram, Pierre Roland of the French B-Box team, Emmanuel Viti of Case Depon, and Stéphane Auger, our old favourite there in his 8th Tour de France. He rides for Cofidis. And there you can see the route today. Flat roads all the way, really, and 112 kilometres still to ride. And 3:17 is a descending gap just now. The peloton are livening up. The box rider on the front there is Pierre Roland. Everybody seems to be working well together. They might get a first sighting of the first sector of cobblestones, at least, before the reactions start from behind. Steve Cummings in black, the new British Team Sky. And it's only the 3rd time in the history of the sport we've had a full British team registered in the Tour de France.
Well, these riders, Phil, they built themselves up a fairly good advantage by working together on the early flat part of the course. But I've seen a lot of attention at the front end of the main field with the riders, I think, wanting to pull it all back together before these final 7 sections of cobblestone so that they can place their leaders in the first 15 to 20 places. Because although these are not the most difficult cobbles, they are very difficult if you don't know how to ride them. And the statistics we talked about at the start, there's around about 50% of the riders in this race have never raced over a cobblestone surface in their lives.
Just to remind you of the washing line down below there. They're all the colours of the leaders of the race and where they are. But have a look at this, Paul. This is how they work together.
Well, the way you can see them working, the wind is coming here from the left-hand side, and the riders move up. And what they do is they shelter the riders on the right-hand side. And there you can see there, once you start to slip down on the right-hand side of the road there, you're sheltering from the wind. And that's the important thing. Everybody in this breakaway is taking the wind into their face for around about 25 to 30 metres, because there's a large number of riders in this breakaway. In old jargon in cycling, they used to call it bit and bit, meaning you were doing a little bit at the front and then swinging off.
Yes, or through and off is, I think, a term often used to in American riders. Yellow numbers being worn by Quick Step. They also got the lead yesterday in the King of the Mountains, and the race itself in yellow for Sylvain Chavanel. He's going to be a proud man when we cross the borders into France today. Pause, fast forward, do what you like with this one. Real-time GPS tracking of the peloton as well. It's as close as you can get in the Tour de France without a passport. That's the Tour Tracker for $29.95. Back to the action now. This is Alberto Contador. Not too sure where he is. I think he's coming back into the race, Paul. Probably a natural break.
Probably a natural break, but what's probably more important to note, if we get another chance to look at his bike, he's actually riding a specialized Paris-Roubaix bike, and it's a bike that's actually got dampeners in the front forks and the rear forks to make his ride over the cobblestones a little bit more comfortable.
passing the doctor's car. They're in need of a rest today after the busy day they had yesterday, after the descent of the Stocker. Flags of Norway on the left. Torhushoff was the big man who missed out yesterday. He was very frustrated. He wanted to sprint, but they had this gentleman's agreement, of which what he was not a party to, and so nobody did sprint. And in fact, the referees decided only the points for the green jersey would be attributed to the winner of the day. Nobody else got anything because they never raced for the line.
Well, just watch this, and you can, if we can keep monitoring from the helicopter here, you might have noticed that although Alberto Contador stopped at the back end of the main field, he did have a teammate alongside him. And if you keep looking at the right-hand side there, you can see the first thing they're doing is moving right up along the right-hand side of the road there to pace Alberto Contador back to the front positions in the main field. As soon as a big leader like Contador, Armstrong, anybody else there who's thinking about winning the Tour de France gets back into contact with the main field, what they want to do is get straight up to the front of the pack, because that theoretically is where the least danger is.
Well, the 22 kilometres from the first sector of cobblestones at the moment, so you'll want to be near that sharp end of the race once you enter the cobblestone, because after that you don't know what will happen immediately in front of you, so you'll want to see daylight in front of you if possible.
Well, a few people asked me, would there be any different bikes for today or any different tyres? Well, yes, most of the teams for today's stage would have put on a slightly larger tyre. There you can see Alberto Contador, how he's moved straight up along the right-hand side there. His tyres will maybe be a fraction bigger by only a couple of millimetres, but what's more important is the tyre pressure on a day like this. They will have reduced the tyre pressures by up to 20 pounds per square inch. And then the other important thing is I did notice that Alberto Contador is riding that specialised Paris-Roubaix bike with the little dampening effect in the forks at the front and back end. So he's obviously tried that. He obviously used that when he was training over the cobblestones with Peter van Petegem, who we were talking about earlier on.
Well, that's a colourful bunch down there today, but sad to see that Christian van der Velde unable to continue, going out early on again in a major tour. And Tyler Farrett is in here, but he's pretty heavily bandaged, and we hope he'll get through today and recover pretty quickly, because the next couple of stages could be for the sprinters. This is the composition of the breakaway, which got away 13 kilometres in today. It's a good mixture of riders. In fact, 4 of them are Tour first-timers. And rider Hainaut has good form if he's carried over his spring form for Garmin Transitions. He's the best placed in that breakaway, 3 minutes 43 seconds behind the race lead. So for a long while today, he was in the lead. He's fallen fractionally behind the yellow jersey now, because it's down to approximately 3 minutes and 37 seconds. Let's have a look where we are, Paul.
Yeah, looking at the front end of the race, though, that you can see it is fairly organised. The race today, as we see the P in the middle, that's where the peloton is. We started over onto the right-hand side, so we're moving today in a westerly direction. Then we circumnavigate the area of Arenberg to come into the finish line. Basically, we're approaching the forest of Arenberg, which is a very famous section of cobblestones from the same direction that the Paris-Roubaix race would come through. However, fortunately for the riders, we're not actually going down that section of cobblestones, because that would be mayhem.
Coming down from the north, I have to say it's the first time I've ever seen the forest of Arenberg at this time of the year. I've only ever seen it in April time, and you'll be amazed at the amount of grass which has now grown through those cobblestones. It would have been quite a sight today if the race had gone through the forest of Arenberg.
Well, just looking there at the two Frenchmen going out of view, the yellow jersey on the shoulders of Sylvain Chavanel, the polka dot jersey on the shoulders of Jérôme Pinault, and of course the green jersey is also being led by Sylvain Chavanel. Now, the French have not led all 3 competitions like this, Phil, since 1992, and funnily enough, that was a stage originating from Brussels as well. And the leaders on that occasion were Laurent Jalabert, who was green, Pascal Lino, who was in yellow, and Richard Virenque, who was wearing the polka dot.
Well, we're looking down the beautiful city of Tournai here. Now, here's the game we love you to play, so don't forget to log on to versus.com/lead the pack. And you need to do this every day during the tour, and you have a chance to win a trip for 2 to the Tour de France next year and a Cervelo R3 bicycle. You can also win a yellow or a polka dot jersey like we use in our performance predictions, and they're signed by us. Today's code word, and you've guessed it, of course, is cobblestones. That's what you need today to go online. So as we look down here on Tournai, where the English once occupied this town, it was back in 1513. I think we lost out after a few years, though. We gave it back. So as we look down now, we're going to be about 18 kilometres away from the first sector of cobblestones when we come back. And I'm just looking now. I'm here on the radio. We've got a problem, and we have got a little problem on the road here. This looks as though it's Tyler Farrar. What's happened? We just heard on race radio he'd pulled over to the road. I think he's okay, but which gives us a chance to show you the heavy bandaging of the elbow and the left side of his leg. Well, he hasn't got any bandages on his leg now. He's taken them off.
Phil, this is a man who went down yesterday extremely hard with his teammate Christian van der Velde. A lot of bad luck, really, for Garmin transitions, and we got a chance to see just how heavily bandaged up he was. He's got a hairline fracture in his wrist, and of course he's got a little bit of a crack in his elbow as well. He is going to have a very difficult day today, but this is a special event. This is an event that no rider ever really wants to abandon. It's like as if you want to ascend the Himalayas and get up to the summit of Mount Everest. You don't want to get to 300 meters to go and stop.
That is absolutely right. Just got a glimpse of former world champion Alessandro Ballan going through there. Well, we'll take a break. When we come back, we're going to tell you about George Hincapie. He is a man for the cobblestones, and if you want to know what he thinks of them, check him out on Twitter, because I can't tell you what he said. We'll see you in just a moment.
That's been the question I've been asked the most, is, well, you know, why I didn't ride with Lance. And, you know, it's a tough question. We have a ton of history together.
Well, welcome back. Dating as far back as 761 AD, the location of the Tours Cathedral has been used in as a place of worship. You know, the current 5-towered Romanesque cathedrals were completed in 1171. That's an awful long time ago. On the interior, the tapestries and the jewel encrusted by Byzantine cross, as well as pieces by famous Flemish artists Jacob Jordans and Peter Paul Rubens. And we all know of Peter Paul. Well, the peloton is making steady progress to say goodbye to Belgium today and hello to France, but the Belgian cobblestones will also have their say. We have a couple of sectors before we race into France itself. The first sector of cobblestones will come at 85 kilometres to go, so that's putting us just on 15 kilometres now before we hit the first sector of cobblestones. That's why Quick-Step are now piling on the pressure in the front. They took over the team lead yesterday as well off Radio Shack, so they're wearing the yellow numbers as team leaders. They've got the yellow jersey on Chavanel, and they've got the polka dot jersey on Jérôme Pinault, because he's also on Quick-Step. So what a day out they had yesterday. Finding the way through the forest here. If you're just joining us, I have to tell you Christian van der Velde abandoned today because of injuries received yesterday. And another rider who didn't start today, Nicky Terpstra. So it's time now to bring you up to date. I promised it on George Hincapie. It's time now to give you our Traveller's Athlete profile. George Hincapie, who can and has been the king of the cobbles. Let's hear from George.
I had a great opportunity to go to BMC, which was at the time a very small team who really needed a rider like myself to help them gain the attention, to help them sign other riders. So really my role in the team seemed to be a lot greater than it was on Columbia.
George was a key signing to this organization. Without it, I don't know if we would have been able to go to the next step, which was to offer the opportunity to the European riders.
It just seemed like a good fit for me and for my family. Obviously, we're using my clothing. It's a great way to showcase our brand internationally.
George is basically somebody that has great respect from all the riders in the peloton.
Once he came to the team, it's sort of set up, you know, I think everyone kind of started looking and saying, oh, look at these guys are, you know, this team means business.
Phil, since 1999, all he's ever done is ride as a dedicated teammate to Lance Armstrong. Today, he's opened up the copybook for himself.
That's been the question I've been asked the most, is, you know, why I didn't ride with Lance. And, you know, it's a tough question. Lance and I obviously are great friends. We have a ton of history together. At the same time, you know, I had an opportunity to do something different, sort of have my own team, showcase my brand, be involved with people that have a different sort of vision to cycling. So while it was a tough decision not to ride with Lance, I'm still very happy and confident that I made the right choice. I'm still feeling good, and I know that if I stopped now, that I would miss the sport a lot, and I still feel like I can give to the sport a lot. So the day that I wake up and I can't go out there and train and do my job to the absolute fullest, then I know that I can keep going.
Yes, well, that's our Travellers Athlete profile, and watch out for George today because he is a man for the cobblestones. He's always ridden so well in Paris-Roubaix. He's had his first share of bad luck at the same time in that event as well. He's 37 years of age now, George. He doesn't look any older and he doesn't look any weaker. He is such a strong bike rider. I think his strength is the way he can talk to the young riders and make them believe in themselves, which George is very good at. Quiet man of world cycling, unless you go one-on-one with him. Well, there we are. Quick Step driving on at the front. They'll keep this pace consistently high now to stop anybody moving up that peloton and displacing their yellow jersey. Isn't it funny, Paul, when you look at the riders here, how all of a sudden you see a team turned into a champion team once they've got the leader on it?
Well, that's the way it is. I mean, this team, Quick Step, they had no idea what their tactics were going to be coming into this tour because they lost their big man, Tom Bonin. But all of a sudden, when you've got the lead in a competition, whether it's the lead in the King of the Mountains or the lead in the yellow jersey, you will fight and try and keep hold of that as long as possible. And that's exactly what Team Quick Step are doing now. From a team with no ambition at all, it's a team with a goal. And their goal at the moment is to keep hold of the yellow jersey right the way down to the Alps if they can, because Sylvain Chavanel is no mean performer. He actually once finished 20th overall in the Tour de France. They will have a hard time dislodging him.
Well, we're in the centre of Lens here at the moment. And just look at the crowds. This is still Belgium, but only just right now. And the crowd's magnificent here. Remember, it's a working day normally, but we closed Spa down yesterday, and now it looks like we're closing the rest of the country down here in Belgium as the riders progress. 7 leaders out in front since this 13th kilometre today, and they're all working together towards those first cobbles. So 96 kilometres to go. We encounter the first cobblestones at 85. We're creeping closer. The wind indicating a crosswind at the moment. And we'll stay in this general direction for a while. We'll take a break. Rejoin us. Tour de France, watch out. This was moments ago. Here it always happens when we take a break. We're 10 kilometres from the cobblestones. We're on a dead straight road. Watch the left of your picture, because that rider, whoever he was, started taking out a little slice of the peloton. A Futon Suveto rider on the right. He does the same thing. They hit the sidewalk on the edges, while some riders are actually riding on the sidewalk. And this is the result. I think they're all okay, but one or two are very slow. That's Ruben Perez starting to play with his pedals because his chain is off. I think we might be able to show that again, but there's a Lotto rider down there who doesn't look too clever at the moment. Just have another look, front left of the picture. He was actually stuck in the actual gutter of the road, and he couldn't do anything about it because there was a little curb to the sidewalk. And when he went, the rest had no choice but to go with him. The boy on the right there, the Fujo Suveto, I just missed the spectator, didn't even move as the rider flew at him. He still stood there now. Well, this is most amazing. This wasn't really part of the plan to fall off on a dead straight road, perfectly dry conditions. And the cobblestones are still 6 miles in front. Back to the head of the race now as we pick up the live action again. And as you can see, it is the Quick Step boys riding hard at the front. I don't know if we can show you any more. Oh, let's have another look. Now we'll watch the right here. This is where you see the Lamprey rider was battling the gutter, but it was the rider behind that couldn't work it out, and he was down. I'm not sure whether that rider behind him wasn't the champion of Germany. It was a pure white jersey. I hope it wasn't Tony Martin. So here we are now, settling down. Radio Shack are steering Lance Armstrong. He's just behind the lead rider on his team, the red jersey here, dead centre of our picture. They're looking after him. He's told them to take him to the cobblestones in the front part of the peloton. Denny Menchoff is also creeping up there for Rabobank. And we also understand that Robert Hessing, the youngster who's not a favourite tags being piled onto his shoulders, is also riding with a slight fracture of his arm after the crash yesterday. So he'll be wrapped up as well. These are the 7 leaders who established after only 13 kilometres today and are hanging on to a little lead at the moment. So there they are, working well together and racing towards the first sector of the cobblestones. So just seeing here that the anxious faces these riders for these boys have never been in the Tour de France before. So as we watch these riders down here, let's just check out on the Tour leaders presented by Cadillac. Here they all are. Chavanel owns 2 jerseys, the green, which is being worn by Alessandro Patacchi, and the yellow, which he wears today. Jerome Pino, his teammate, is in the lead in the King of the Mountains now. First time we've had that on the road today. And the best young rider remains Tony Martin since the race started. All right, well, Alberto Contador is hoping to do something today on a very special bicycle. And so this is now our specialised journey to the podium.
I believe that the preparation for the stage 3 will be very important. Tensions will be high when trying to be at the head of the pack. The first thing will be to become acquainted with the stage, and then after, I need to learn about the terrain. Cyclists such Bonin and Hincapie are experts when it comes down to this style of riding. But regardless, with good preparation, we should not have any problems and come out ahead. My bike is very important, especially in these conditions. Where your bike is limited, you begin to notice the differences between bicycles. And in this case, the new bike Specialized has provided me will be crucial. I'm not going to lose sleep over this stage. I'm really not going to give it too much thought. I could be wrong. But I have trained on cobbles, and there's a lot of races that are different. Some can be more difficult than others. As long as I race as fast as I can, I will be good.
That's our specialised journey to the podium. Well, no sleepless nights, he says, but I wonder. In fact, Tom Bonin, he mentioned there, was unlucky. Injury kept him out of the Tour de France. 7 riders up front. Radio Shack bringing Lance Armstrong through to the front. The yellow jersey in the middle there of Sylvain Chavanel. Nervous moments. I can see Levi Leipheimer tucked in behind Armstrong as well. They know what to expect. We are 6.5 kilometres from the first sector of cobblestones. Time for a break. See you in a moment. These are our Pacific Life contenders at the moment, and we've got Armstrong still the best placed of them all here. In 5th place, Alberto Contador 7th, Leipheimer is in 8th, and Michael Rogers 13th, with Cadel Evans there in 19th place. But the time gaps off the leader are significant perhaps at the moment. Further down, Carlos Sastre won in 2008. He's there in 51st. Frank Schleck 59th, a champion, and Andy Schlechter 85th. Well, Christian van der Velde did not start today, so we can find out all about that now. Sadly, here's Frankie Andreu talking with Christian this morning.
Standing here with Christian van der Velde from Garmin Transition, and yesterday, Robbie interviewed you at the hospital. You had hopes to be able to take the start, but a little bit different this morning.
Yeah, I was pretty banged up. I was being optimistic and still excited at the hospital, but yeah, I cracked some ribs quite well and did some damage, maybe to some old injuries from my back, so it's definitely not worth it at this point in time. I came into the Tour damaged, and maybe that was a little bit of a mistake, but it made it that much easier to hurt myself again.
So tell me a little bit about the damage coming into the Tour, and then what are the injuries right now?
Well, I had cracked ribs from Swiss, from the second to last day in Swiss, so, and then I landed up right on the same side yesterday, and didn't even re-break it. It's in different spots, so it's messed up on my right side, and yeah.
Last year, obviously, bad luck leading into the Tour, the big crash in the Giro. This year, again, more crashes. Again, you're leaving the Tour. It must be disappointing for you.
Well, I didn't leave the Tour. I got 8th last year, so I had the same expectations. Yes, I was banged up going to it, and I was banged up this year, but at the same time, I really thought that I was going to do a good Tour this year, and I was pretty confident. And I usually don't say that unless I'm quite confident. So, you know what? It's been so much this year that it's okay. I'm pretty eased right now, that just to be going home and completely regrouping, getting back with my family, go back to Chicago, and there's only one home,
And what's up next for you?
I'm just gonna take it day by day, you know, really, and just see when I'm ready to get on the bike, I'm ready to get on the bike. I've had a lot of trauma to my body this year, and I'm just really going to truly let myself get to 100% and then take it from there.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Well, we certainly wish Christian well, because he's such a game player in the sport of cycling, but he's had some bad luck this year, let's be honest. Let's hope he does come back strong next year at least. He'll be back in the Tour. Well, the gaps are there. We're not far away now from that first sector of cobblestones. As we search around now, we're looking to enter the first sector of cobblestones at Armagny. And it's to the leaders. They'll be there first now as they're applauded over the canal. Breathe in. It's rather a narrow cantilevered lift bridge, that one. As leading is the Case de Pan rider, Imono Viti. 2:25. The gap is coming down quite rapidly now because the pressure is on at the peloton, because the front half of the peloton doesn't want the back half to get to the front.
Well, the great advantage in a stage like this, Phil, is if you're in a breakaway situation of 6 or 7 riders, as we're looking at here, you don't have to battle to get into the cobblestone section. You just naturally go in the first few positions. But behind, the riders in that main field are going to be so nervous, trying to fight, take risks. You see the little pieces of cobbles over to the left-hand side. That theoretically separates the road from the cycle path over on the left. Well, it's very dangerous in the main field because riders will be jumping across that, trying to use a bit of smooth road to move up to the front end of the main field, and that's how crashes and accidents happen.
Well, we're going to see the first sector very shortly now. We are 1 kilometre for the leaders going in at the moment. And I did see there it was Kolobnev, Paul, who got caught up in that crash. I saw the white jersey go down. I thought it was possibly Tony Martin, but it was Alexander Kolobnev who went down there, the new champion of Russia. Have also changed their jersey slightly as the national champion. Team Sky, this is good to see. Team Sky working for Bradley Wiggins have put their men on the front here, despite the fact they've got one man in the breakaway, Steve Cummings. They've got a drive at the back. These boys are about to hit the cobblestones at the front. Half a kilometre to go for them. You'd never know it was just round the corner, would you? Look at beautiful road there.
Yeah, but the most dangerous thing I mentioned earlier, you just look at that join down between the 2 blocks of cement in the middle of the road. That's what makes racing in Belgium so very dangerous. Sometimes during the winter months, those those cement sections, they separate apart and leave a gap, and that gap just happens to be usually the width of a front tire.
Yes, Death Valley, the riders call it, don't they? As look at the tail of this peloton now. These boys are just gonna have to hope they go sailing on through the cobblestones today. And Nicky Sorensen, the champion of Denmark, looked to be last man. Now here comes Stu O'Grady, once winner of Paris-Roubaix. He's just had to squeeze in a bit for the same bridge that the other boys not long ago went over. And he was nearly on the front of the peloton there. So the peloton know it's not far now. You can, when we get those close shots of their faces, you can see just how anxious they are. They're all looking extremely stressed right now.
Well, there's the right-hand turn. They came straight through that little bridge. Right-hand turn. They should be onto the first section of cobblestones. Here it is, section number 1.
Look at the crowds.
Pavé of Ormegny, 350 metres long. But it's a pretty nasty piece of road.
Well, the flag of Scotland is just under our picture here, being waved for David Miller, no doubt. Our camera showing you the cobblestones. But now the leaders and the... Now tell us, Paul, what is the way, the technique of riding these cobblestones?
The only way to ride the cobblestones is actually, believe it or not, to be as relaxed as possible, not to hold the front end of the bike, not to steer the front end of the bike, but to allow it to find the smoothest way through the cobblestones. The other way to ride it as well is actually to ride with a big gear. You can't ride on the cobblestones with suppleness, as you see Lance Armstrong and other riders use in an individual time trial. You've got to ride them with sheer power and speed.
And the crowd were there in a big way. It's only a short section, this one, of cobblestones, but the crowd in a big time here. Imagine what they're going to be like as we approach the finish today for the very hard sectors as we get down towards the finish in Arenberg itself. Well, there was no problem there, really. It wasn't a terribly hard section, and as you say, you couldn't really understand why they raced. But what's happened now is they've got the boys to the front, and they're sort of blocking off the road. There's no need to race fast now because you can hold all the riders behind you.
Well, that was the important thing. There was that big battle on the wide road to get the hierarchy organised at the front end of the main field. Once they've got through this section of cobblestones, Phil, they can actually breathe a sigh of relief for about 40 kilometres, because the section number 2 doesn't come along until 44 kilometres to go. But from that point onwards, there's a section of cobblestones every 10 kilometres or so, and that's when the race is really going to come down.
Well, you just see Frank Schleck having a little laugh there in his Champion of Luxembourg jersey, and so too Andy alongside him, sitting behind Stuart O'Grady, the 3 Saxo Bank members. They're content as to exactly where they've got themselves in the peloton, because nobody can get through on them now as they make the right turn. They sweep onto this short stretch of cobblestones, and they'll try and control it from the front here. I think you've got to watch out for the riders in the middle, because others make mistakes and the ones behind are the ones that tumble.
Well, sitting at the front, Radio Shack have got control, covered there by Team Saxo Bank, the men who have announced that before the start of this stage, they would use this stage to try and distance Alberto Contador. Contador was only in about 15th to 20th place there. You can see him just moving up. That's a good ride by Contador. He was obviously a little bit nervous about today's stage, and he's riding comfortably at the front end of the pack.
He looks pretty settled at the moment. He's watching the pace. I think it's Sergio Paulinho who's heading up on the cobbles at the moment. And there's the flag of the Isle of Man. We haven't seen that on the tour, at least I haven't. That's the flag of Mark Cavendish, the Manx missile, who, if he can survive the cobblestones, would certainly love the sprint finish today. It's slightly downhill. And they've actually put cobbles in the centre of the road just to make you feel at home as you approach the finish. So as we look through here, the riders are now off that first sector. They were just an hors d'oeuvre, if you like, a foretaste of what's to come. We're up to 3 kilometre stretches coming up later on. Now, as they settle down, have a drink, it's time for us all there. Map My Ride competition. As well, don't forget now, Map My Ride, just go to Map My Ride, the Tour Challenge. Sign up today at Versi.com. There's what you do, mapmyride.com/Tour de France. Enjoy that competition and plenty of prizes at stake. So that's the Aquaphor Le Tour Challenge. Enjoy that as we now see a long, long line of riders pulled out off the cobblestones here. Well, that is an excellent sight from the helicopter. Riders will be rather pleased. They've got the first taste under the belt now as they leave the town and start to settle down. A little bit of a ride now before we get to the next sector of cobblestone. Stuart O'Grady on the far right. One of the teams who always do well over this sort of a course is Cervelo. We'll tell you more of them when we come back.
We fight together, we stick together, and this team now is not a project anymore, it's a team.
Welcome back to the Tour de France as we gaze out here at the beautiful Marquez windmill here. It's the last functioning windmill in the department of Hainaut, which is where we are at the moment. Now, Team Cervelo is a reasonably new team on the block, but they've had some success, particularly in races over the cobbles and particularly in Paris-Roubaix with their top rider on the team, Thor Hushovd. Well, as he might win today, we thought we'd better get you accustomed to this team. Here we go.
You know, in the past, the teams always worked with 2 goals: to go with the GC rider and try to win stages. But last 8 years, teams change from directions. They want to go, you know, 1 goal only. I think we're a team, we can be successful in the GC as we can in the stages.
Cervelo test team is like a family. There's a lovely little competitive feeling amongst the riders, but it's a friendly competitive, you know.
We have 25 riders and 15 nationalities. Given that, it's amazing the amount of synergy we actually have.
I think we had a wonderful year. Last year was hard because it was almost everything new. We fight together, we stick together, and this team now is not a project anymore, it's a team.
Just had the good guys on board. All people came in, were very motivated. That was our luck, I think. We had the best material, best equipment. Very soon we were the coolest team in the bunch. You know, the black outfit was really recognizable for people. They start calling us the Black Train or the Black Knights.
The goals of the team are racing, product development, fan access, and hospitality. So we choose our riders also based on those 4 items.
We have open minds, and we like listen people, you know. And you can take the right decisions in the right moments, you know. And I think that's really important.
9 riders, but about 25 people, you know, the mechanics and managers, everybody going into war.
From origin, cycling is an individual sport, but you find out if you race as a team, you can perform much stronger.
Well, the Cervelo test team, here they all are. Sadly, Xavier Florencio took something for a saddle sore, has found himself not allowed to start because it contained an amphetamine, or ephedrine rather. Volodymyr Gustav's on the team. Jeremy Hunt in his first tour. Tor Hushoft is here and riding extremely well. Andreas Clear is here. He's a good sprint. He's won a classic. Conor Valovas, I'll have to get used to that one when he starts winning. Brent Lancaster, he's from Sydney in Australia. Daniel Lloyd, he was the last man. He came in at the last minute. And Carlos Sastre is the man they pinned their hopes on for a high GC finish. And they changed the colours since our feature there. They ride in black with big C's on their jerseys today. This is Ryder Hejerdal driving the breakaway. Gap slightly going up. Well, we're getting used to the big crowds now. It's almost old hat pull, isn't it? I mean, we've seen crowds ever since the start in Rotterdam, where the police officially estimated the prologue crowd at just short of 500,000. We blew that out of the water with almost 1 million spectators the next day as we traversed Rotterdam into Belgium, and that's the way it's pretty much stayed ever since. It's on the par with the Tour de France, which never loses its appeal to the public. Although I must say, yesterday, when the riders didn't sprint for that second place finish yesterday, there was a section of the crowd in Spa which booed the riders. I feel, yes, if you want to be a sportsman, have fair play, then do ease up and wait for the others to get back because of the crash. But they were wrong not to put on the spectacle of a sprint for second place.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame, but unfortunately you have to bear in mind that these guys are human beings at the end of the day, and I think they all got caught up by the nature of the race, the accidents that happen to nearly every one of their team members, and throw in a little bit of bad weather and you can get a damp squid.
Indeed you can. Now, just looking here at the hard working of Quick Step. They've got the yellow numbers on because they also got the team off Radio Shack yesterday in the team race. Now, don't forget the tour goes on right across France now as we head down towards the Alps, and tomorrow we'll continue live on Versus, of course, at 8:30 Eastern. It'll be stage 4, and we'll head now off deeper into France. And don't miss stage 8 either, Sunday morning at 7:30, because that is the entry into the Alps. That will be very, very special. Sorry about you guys on the West Coast, but I know you enjoy it because you tell me so. So that's the Tour de France, the most epic race ever on Versus. Gosh, I can't believe the Alps are almost upon us already. We keep on seeing this race so quickly. Every year it seems to flash by as we continue to look at the beauty. This is the castle of Moulbay here in Belgium, but we're right on the borders with France now. We're inside the last 50 miles of the day. The gap is about 2:39, and these boys are waiting for the next cobblestones. We'll wait a little bit longer and we'll take a short break. See you in a moment. Welcome back, and whichever way you look at it, it's a nervous day today. We're having a look here at the eharmony.com, and these are the positions now of the American standings. Haven't changed too much over these last few days. Lance Armstrong is 5th, Leipheimer 8th, Buchwalter in his first tour 11th, Chris Horner 43rd. The others, Zabriskie 130, Hincapie, Tyler Farrer and Christian van der Velde no longer with us, very, very sadly. Let's join Frankie Andreu earlier today. He talks with Lance Armstrong.
Lance, lots of crashes yesterday. What was your take on the day?
There was lots of crashes.
Well, you went down yourself. How was your injuries?
Just abrasions. I don't feel too bad. I don't feel typically those things you get a lot of swelling, a lot of soreness, but especially through the night. But I woke up feeling pretty loose. Surprising.
Today are the cobbles. What have you done specifically to get ready for these pavé sections?
Well, we came and looked at them. Previewed them. I did Flanders. that's about it. But this is a tough day. It's got everybody on edge. I mean, even you saw yesterday that was part of the pre-stress for today. I mean, the first few days. So everybody's ready and slightly scared, or very scared, I should say.
You did the confidence last time there were cobbles during the tour. You got through okay. How's your confidence for this round?
I think it's good. I don't want to be overly confident. I mean, it's dangerous, and the sections this year are much more extreme. There's there's a lot more of them. It's the stuff before too. I mean, even when you have a big wide paved road and everybody's fighting to be at the front, you got no pave there. You got no risks in the road. But that's where people take risks themselves, or the team takes risks, and you have crashes. So, gotta just stay up front and
avoid the risks.
And keep my fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Well, the thing about Lance is he knows exactly what to do. He just wants to make sure the body is up to it today. So far, he's looked okay. He's been kept up near the front by his teammates when it matters. We're waiting for the next entry onto the second sector of cobbles now. It's still a little ride away. So the field probably a little bit less stressed, a little more relaxed. The gap is indicating they're not chasing, because 2:45 is the time gap. Let's have a look what's left. We've been through the one in yellow. The ones remaining are there. 44 kilometers to go. You see we have a 1,200 meters rather of road there. The big one comes at 3.7 kilometers down at Wanze, and then just before the finish, that's a nasty stretch in Havluy. It takes us inside. The last 6 miles for finish was 2.3 kilometers. Watch out for some movement there by the guys who will try to win the day at least. So we're looking here at Samuel Dumoulin. He's been back to the team car. Interesting character. He's had a terrific season, Paul, because with his 6 victories this year, that is a very high number for Samuel. He doesn't normally get that many, and he knows what it's like to win a stage of the Tour as well.
He did. He won a stage of the Tour de France into Nantes some time back. He knows exactly how to perform at the top end of the sport, and he also knows how to look for a breakaway when that is at all possible. But he was involved in one of those crashes yesterday, and as you can see, he was fairly well bandaged up. But he has decided to do the job for the rest of the team. He's dropped back into the pack of cars behind, takes on board drinks. Then he's got to ride all the way up through the main field and get to the front of the pack and distribute the drinks. And I hope they put the right orders in.
Well, there's so many riders. It would be easy to tell the viewers who wasn't involved in crashes yesterday and who was, because I think everybody's got their souvenirs in the situation. Nicky Sorensen, was on the back on the red jersey, has got himself right to the front at the moment. Anxious faces right in the centre left now is Ivan Basso. He's also had his moments, but he's looking okay at the moment. Contador's keeping his team whipped up, keeping himself near the front. All action to come. The cobblestones of northern France. We've seen one sector which was an hors d'oeuvre, and as always, wire away. Lying in the centre of this pile-up is the Sky's team member Simon Gerrans, the Australian. That was Daniel Monnier, the Cofidis boy, has just ridden off, but he's stunned, but he seems okay. The cars are still going by, just checking him out. Here he is. He's got a nasty little bruise coming up on the right top side of his cheek there. But this is a rider really that the Sky team can ill afford to lose. He'll be helping out Bradley Wiggins when it matters most in the mountains. Won the stage of the Tour de France 2 years ago in Italy, in Prato Novoso, just before we had a rest day there. And he beat Igor Martinez, it was at the time, and Igor was not too pleased about that. So as we speak, that was only moments ago. I'm not sure that whether Simon has got back into the field, because they're holding a nice steady tempo, no difference on the gaps. 2.5 minutes at the moment. Now, seeing the Saxo Bank boys, there they are. Well, their bikes, don't forget, are Specialized bikes. And we can tell you a bit more about those bikes now, which are looking after the champions of the Saxo Bank team. So here now is our Specialized product highlight. Take a look at this.
When you see the cobblestones of Paris-Roubaix during this year's tour, you might think of Fabian Cancellara and Team Saxo Bank. Well, this is the bike he rode to victory there, the Project Black Roubaix. And normally, Specialized has silvery, shiny, flashy bikes. This thing's covered in dirt.
People pay a lot of money to have that dirt. That's from Roubaix cobbles. That's where Fabian's been training on this thing.
Obviously, this bike proved worthy in this year's race, but what sets it apart from last year's edition?
Well, the new Roubaix, it's lighter, it's stiffer, just proving that smoother is faster. We've increased the front end with Cobra head tube for increased steering precision. The bottom bracket area has all been beefed up for great power delivery and torsional stiffness. And then the rear end, we increased vertical compliance too, so it makes it a smoother ride, which for these guys, come stage 3, that's what they want. They want to be able to absorb all the cobblestones, yet put the power down and take them to the finish. So we'll see how it is on the day, who's leading out first.
Yeah, we're going to see who's going the fastest, and a lot of talk about having an engine in this bike, but I think the engine actually is in Fabian's legs.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right, Frankie. Going back to live pictures here, Gerard Porte, the doctor, senior doctor on the Tour de France, just cleaning up Simon now. He knows Simon pretty well as a friend, not as a crash victim all of the time. Well, they're getting him patched up slowly, but Gerard Porte here, as I say, Paul, he's worked the Tour de France ever since I've sort of been coming on the tour. I did the Tour of Egypt with him. That's where we first met many years ago. And he's looking after Simon. Simon really got hacked around a bit here, I'm afraid to say. So as we're seeing now, Simon Goins continue on his little pedal back up to the field. 66 kilometers to go, 2 minutes 42 seconds. There's the train. There's a level crossing right by the finishing line today, but it won't be affecting the riders. They'll stop just before the gates today. Plays its part in Paris-Roubaix occasionally. Well, one man who rides those specialized bikes, Andy Schleck, he was hurt yesterday in the crash. Let's see what he had to say to Frankie Andreu this morning.
Andy, lots of bandages on you. Some bad luck yesterday. Can you tell me the extent of your injuries?
Well, I don't feel super, you know. I would lie if I say I don't feel anything. I'm pretty, you know, beaten up. And but I was yesterday night in the hospital, you know, did X-rays, and like nothing is broken, so that's a good sign. And no, I have to come now, you know, to the next days, and then I think it won't be a problem for me in the climbs.
What were your thoughts on yesterday's course and the neutralization of the entire day?
The course wasn't necessary. Of course, you know, you can't blame anyone for the weather, but you gotta, when you do a course like that, you know, downhill, there was oil, and I mean, you know, 80 guys down, that talks for himself. Sometimes, you know, we should not be the dolls of a big show, you know, and I guess that we saw a great, you know, great spirit, you know, from the whole peloton, like everybody agreed, and some, you know, team managers don't agree, but I don't really care what some think. But I'm pretty, you know, happy and proud what how the peloton reacted yesterday. And I think if you ask, you know, 99% of the riders had the same.
There's a good sense of fair spirit yesterday. You talk about making a show of it, but today with the cobbles, you probably don't really agree with today's course either.
No, I don't, and I don't make a secret out of it. I don't.
Good luck.
So the friend is not Paris-Roubaix, and you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps a lot to learn, Andy Schleck, because the Tour de France is not all about mountains and time trials. It's about the complete bike rider, and I must confess, I found more than 1% of the Tour riders who didn't agree with the action of the riders today. However, that's the way it is, and they didn't sprint for second place, and as a result, no green jersey points were awarded yesterday. But today's another day. We'll see how they continue as the cobbles head towards them.
You know, adding cobbles into a Grand Tour is always really, really interesting. It makes it, you know, always a little unpredictable. It becomes a crucial stage for GC riders. It'll definitely make for a more exciting race. You know, you'll see a lot of fighting for position coming into the cobbles.
It really is going to be very decisive. There's certainly going to be a few of them that are going to lose their Tour de France there.
It's going to be so hectic and so much stress on that stage. If guys crash or get a flat tyre in the wrong spot, then you can pretty much say the tour's over.
Now, I think a lot of guys will be really scared from that stage because I think they will adapt a little bit the bikes for it, the tires. It's going to be a real fight to be in the front.
These sections are a lot more technical and demanding, and they come closer to the finish.
I think it's something who can disturb the race. It's going to be really stressful, and I'm sure it's 1 or 2 riders for the GC. They're going to not be in the front, and they do 3, 4, 5 minutes.
It's going to be absolute carnage.
And Andy developed, and we have a much stronger team.
Andy's great on the pavé.
So he knows that area. He lived down there.
Wow, this guy has talent on the cobbles as well.
It's a totally different culture when it comes to cobblestone.
I'm not scared of that because I'm a good bike handler. I have Fabian and Stuart and Matty, and so I'm not afraid of that.
I think on this point it's bad, but I think for the TV it's really good.
Welcome back as we now look at the cobblestones which are heading towards the riders now as they race into the last sector of today's stage of the Tour de France. Big distance, 132.1 miles. Well, they ride on very special wheels as well, and they are very specially made. And Frankie Andrea can tell us more now about the Eastern wheels.
For the past year, all everyone's been talking about are these cobblestone sections that shouldn't be in the Tour. Well, they are, and the cobblestones are the nastiest, roughest sections of road that you can ride on. That's why teams need to make equipment changes. For Team BMC, they choose to ride the Easton SLX rim. It's a full composite carbon wheel, also with a solid braking surface, so there's no separation and no bonding. Also, they use their Easton R4 hub, which is a little bit wider. This provides great lateral stiffness for when they're out of the saddle. Also, the wider hub gives dampening characteristics for going over the cobbles. And lastly, with the tire, instead of a 23mm width, they'll ride a 25mm width tire, a little bit fatter to help with the shock absorption. Now, I've ridden on the cobbles many times, and when you're flying along here, it shakes you up. You just need to pick your line, keep your head up, and hang on.
Well, thanks very much, Frankie, as we're now looking, the riders lifting and stepping on that gas pedal now, very, very anxious to get there. The boys have just gone through the sprint, which doesn't carry too much significance at the moment, but it's been taken out by Kluger, but they're not really sprinting for it. They're just continuing on here. Kluger, Brute and Erviti was the order. There's no more prizes along the road now until they get to the finishing line, but it's time that counts, and if they want to outmaneuver each other, they better start thinking about it soon. Looks as though Aviti's having a trouble keeping up with the pace being set right now. Steve Cummings is driving on at the front. Well, he's been a world record holder over 4,000 metres on the track in the team pursuit, so he's a very, very quick bike rider indeed. Aviti just helping out the Pavel Brute as he makes that right-hander. Great moments of speed coming at us now, and the gap is immediately reversing once again, down to a flat 2 minutes now, inside 60 kilometres to go. We're heading towards the second sector of cobblestones, which will come at 44 from the finish. So we're just 15 kilometres away.
Quite funny there, Phil, because just as we took that sweeping right-hand bend, there was a bunch of people dressed in orange shirts. And although we're right in the heart of Belgium, I think maybe they're getting ready for the Dutch semi-final in the World Cup tonight. I wonder who they're supporting
tonight. Well, I know the Tour de France will all be watching television straight after the finish tonight, of course, with Holland facing up to Uruguay in the semi-finals. And I wouldn't be surprised if a Dutch rider doesn't try to win to preempt a very successful day. So the peloton's speeding now, and that's the word at the moment as they continue along the open highways here, heading to the French borders now. Now, don't forget, stage 7 is the first day with any real climbs this year. Riders targeting for the King of the Mountains, they get a little bit frisky, of course. The default strategy is to pad a big lead early and then defend it. We have the Col de la Croix, de la Sierra, and the classic big climb that, and that'll take us to the finish at which is an area, beautiful area, right on the edge of the Alps. Visit bicycling.com for exclusive daily tour commentary, analysis, and cycling's biggest names, interactive stage maps, and more. Well, we're flashing off down the road here, a ways back down the course right now, because this beautiful chateau here is the castle of Belloy. We left it way down up towards the start this morning, but we thought we'd give you a second look. At least our helicopter didn't. It's rather a beautiful castle. Might have a little problem with the water coming in at the moment. It looks as though it was all around the kitchen doorway. Back with the race here now as they continue to try to hold position at the front. We are inching closer. We are 13 kilometres now from the leaders, hitting the next section of cobblestones. And then they'll start to come a little bit quicker at the peloton. Cervelo here looks to me as though they might have Carlos Sastre and Thor Hushov's interest at stake. Sight we don't like to see. Gerard Porte swabbing off Simon Gerrans, who has rejoined the peloton after his crash. We'll see you in just a moment on the route to Tour. For our SunGuard stage summary here. Let's have a look how the day has gone so far. Painful for some. 7 riders getting away at 13 kilometres. Had one crash in the peloton. There's 112 to go. 72 to go. Poor old Simon Gerrans gone down quite heavily underneath his own bike. He's back in the peloton now, and the current time gap 1 minute and 50 seconds. It's reversing now. The peloton are scenting the cobbles are ahead. Now, just look at this, Paul. The total block has gone on by the riders at the front. You can only have a road so wide. And so while these boys get on with the action, big rider Hejerdal from Garmin Transitions is there working very hard. This is the Russian rider coming through now, Pavel Brut. He's the sort of rider, if he sees the chance of this breakaway succeeding, will definitely go for a lone win. He will try to leave the 6.
No, he certainly will. He's an aggressive rider. He will look for any possible opportunity. I'd like to see that Steve Cummings can probably ride fairly well on the cobbles as well, because coming from a background on the track, he has the power and suppleness which is required to ride steadily over the cobblestones, and so too should rider Hejerdal, because he comes from a background of being a very good mountain bike rider, just as does Cadel Evans. Cadel, I think, although I don't think he's ever ridden Paris-Roubaix, Phil, will be looking forward to riding over the cobblestones, because he's got the ability and the agility to ride well on those stones.
Steve Cummings has got silver medals in the Olympic Games and in the World Championships in the team pursuits, where Britain has reigned supreme in that off and on, and he's got bronze medal in it as well in the World Championships. So he's a very, very accomplished bike rider on the track, and he's turned his skill to the road. This is his first Tour de France, and he comes with Team Sky, who's enjoying their first Tour de France as well.
We're just looking at Team Saxo Bank, Phil. There's a lot of riders in the black and white jerseys at the front with experience on these cobblestone races. Of course, Matty Breschel, Stuart O'Grady and Fabian Cancellara. In fact, the team manager this morning, Bjarne Rice, said this isn't a day to cry like yesterday. This is a day to fight.
So the peloton reorganising themselves here as we head towards the cobblestones, and that's the trick. Stand by, here we go. Log on to versus.com/lead the pack. Do it every day during the tour. You could be with us on the Tour de France next year. You could have a Cervelo R3 bicycle, or a yellow or a polka dot jersey. Just go online, versus.com, and enjoy the game. You'll need the password today, which is cobblestones. So, as the riders now steady the pace here, sitting at the front is Nicky Sorensen, the new champion of Denmark, dead centre of the pictures, doing his work here for the team. Boys at the back, look how far we are behind the leaders when you come to the back of the race. This is when it really begins to hurt. Setting the pace there. Well, ironically, Maxime Bouet, the boy at the back here, was the rider who was second yesterday, but no positions were awarded, or points were awarded. Officially, he was second on the day, but no points were awarded for the green jersey. He's moved up now. He's heard me talking about him. So, Steve Cummings in that breakaway, looking very, very well. 51.7 kilometres to go. 44 kilometres. We encounter quite a serious sector of cobblestones. It's a long way to Paris, as you know, and the cobblestones will set the trend for the rest of the tour. back. Let's remind ourselves then with our Pacific Life, a race update here. What's happening? The power to help you succeed, and we all need that power today, I think, on the cobblestones of France and Belgium, because we're still in Belgium. We're still about 15 kilometres before we go through Belgium and through the frontier and off into France, where we'll stay for the next 2.5 weeks. Now, Mark Cavendish is at the back of the race, and we have noticed Mark Renshaw sitting at the back of the bunch. Now we know why. He's waiting to see the return of Mark Cavendish. Don't know why he's off the back, whether it's a flat tyre or a natural brake, I don't know. It's not a good time to be off the back, because as you can see, Jens Voigt and Saxo Bank in general are driving. There's Renshaw now. He's come back through the cars to try and pick him up and take him back up to the peloton, save a little bit of an effort for him. I don't think he would have stopped voluntarily at this stage of the day. I think there must be another reason for that. Renshaw's got him anyway. Quick words? No time for quick words. Let's get back onto the action here. There will be allowed a brief respite in the cars, then the referees will shout at them to move through. They must show progress. That's basically the rule of thumb that the commissaires, the referees, will look at. They must show progress. If they sit in the same position for too long, then it's seen as being paced. There's the peloton now, and it is beginning to fly here. 4 kilometres to go to the next sector of cobblestones. Little time then for us to check out on the Nike chalkbot, because it's giving people all over France and the United States access to the roads here along the Tour de France, a chance for their messages to be printed along the way. And you can find out all about it at livestrong.com and at facebook.com/livestrong. You get your messages on the route to Tour, and we can all have a read of them. Encouragement for the fighters for cancer. Well, it's just about now, Paul, when you know you're in the Tour de France. These boys are racing flat out now. You always think, well, they're all in the peloton. It can't be that hard, but every man is for himself just now.
Well, it's very difficult now because everybody's trying to get up to the first 15 places in the main field, because they know in 3 or 4 kilometres time they're going to hit a very long section of cobblestones. The cobblestone section of Orléans, which is the second section, which followed up very quickly a couple of kilometres later by another section. That's why the big battle is going on. You can see Sylvain Chavanel in his yellow jersey there. He's staying up the front on his own. He's lost his teammates who've done a lot of pacemaking around that big sweeping bend. Now these riders will hope that they've got enough road to get around there and not get involved with the curbstones at the side. There's organisation. Everybody's moving up, scuttling up through the middle, round the outside, to make sure they can find themselves a good place to enter into the cobblestone sections right at the front of the pack. But what a job of work here being done by big Jens Voigt.
Voigt just pounds those pedals. He never has any thought in his mind of the finishing line. He throws his energy to the wind here, all for the team, and that is the unselfish bike rider he is. So as we look at Voigt continue to set the pace here at the front, well, if you fancy getting in amongst it with the Tour riders, well, Trek is giving away 10 dream bikes. Any Trek of your choice, one every day, July 16th through the 25th, and you can sign up now at trekbikes.com, and therefore you can dream bigger. Get in there alongside Jens Voigt. Give him a hand. He needs it right now. Magnificent bike rider he is, and he's trying to get his team onto the cobblestones first. He's 2 and a bit kilometres away. He's 2 and a bit kilometres away as we now will take a quick break, so we're back in time for the journey onto the cobblestones. Now, don't forget, we can check in now with Liam, who's in charge of the daily line, and to find out what it's on tonight's show. Liam's going to tell us all about that. Let's check in with him. See you in a moment.
Cycling fans, be sure to check out the Daily Line tonight for a full recap.
Well, as we line up for the cobblestones, this is considered one of the most beautiful curiosities in Belgium. No exact date can be placed on the creation of the Chateau de Beloy. It's called the Versailles of Belgium. Each room has ancient furniture which speaks to the history of the estate. We've seen the outside, now you've seen the inside, and now you've seen the cobblestones. They've just literally, the leaders, hit the sector of cobblestones here, and it's very dry and the dust is rising. And Ryder Hagedal, the big Canadian on Garmin Slipstream, a Garmin Transition, sorry, is powdering on the front here now. Steve Cummings is the rider sitting at the back. He wants to get off the back if he can. As we look down now, you can see the change shuddering over the derailleur here. But this is rider Hainaut at his very best. Big, strong man from Canada, Paul.
He's an extremely strong rider, but Phil, don't forget, in the back part of his career, he was a very good mountain biker. Flicks across the roads there to find a little bit of soft road to try and get away from the banging of the cobblestones, and he's opening up a gap. Ride over these cobblestones. You've just got to ride as hard as you can. Forget about everybody behind you. It's almost like riding uphill, because if you can't get onto the wheel of the rider in front of you, get blown away. Cummings has seen that, and the gap there has been left by Pavel Brut.
Pavel Brut is having a little problem now. I can quickly tell you that the organisers have imposed a new rule today to stop riders changing bikes to a bike that might have an engine in them. I don't think anybody believes it happening, but they're taking precautions, so they're not allowed to take a bicycle if they have a problem other than from the following team cars behind or from a teammate in the race.
Well, there you can see now, this is how they're going to hit the first section of cobblestones. They may well survive the first section, but they will keep hitting these cobblestone sections every 10 kilometres or so now, and they are extremely long. Team Saxo Bank have decided this is going to be the big day for them. The leading group of 7 are off the cobblestone section number 2, and very shortly they'll be on section number 3, which is in about 2 kilometres time. But the pressure is being dished out here by Saxo Bank, and it's yet to be thrown by Fabian Cancellara, but you can see what the sort of damage is being done at the back, as here Jesus Fernandez, who is a very good climber, is in having a little bit of difficulty.
Well, as we look at the riders here crashing over the cobblestones here, Paul, they do make many adjustments to the bikes. And I can tell you about one product, Physique, you know, they've introduced a handlebar tape and gel. They did it back in 2004, and they placed it underneath the normal tape on the handlebars, and all this provides the dampening and stops the big blisters on the hands as they ride over these cobblestones.
Have a look at the time gap, though, Phil, here, where the damage is being done by Team Saxo Bank. We went into this section of cobbles at about a minute and 30 seconds. All of a sudden, it's 1:11. That is a great team, Team Saxo Bank. They've come out here this afternoon to hand out a little bit of pain. Andreas Kloden is the Saxo Bank rider up at the front there, looking pretty good. And nice to see the British champion, Geraint Thomas, over there on the left, wearing number 39.
And he's sitting on the back wheel there of the Norwegian champion, Thor Hushovd. On the right now as we look, just behind, there's the white jersey of the new British champion, Geraint Thomas, who's riding his second Tour de France, and the first one, of course, for Sky. Lance Armstrong is quite well placed. He snatches a drink there somehow on the course, but there's a load of dust now as the riders get towards the end of this cobble stretch. I have to say, they're riding it nervously. They're very attentive, though, and so far they're getting through without any problems whatsoever.
No major panic, but these are quite dramatic pictures here of the dust that's being thrown up off the cobblestones. And there you can see this is back with the leading group of 7 riders. Hainaut has gone clear. This is the next section of cobblestones, section number 3 at Rogny. It's only 700 metres long, or maybe it isn't. That doesn't even count.
Well, we're heading up towards the borders now, about 2 kilometres from the borders of Belgium with France, and the roads continue over into France, yes. Hainaut is a really strong boy here, and look at this, he's made the most of these cobblestones, and if he can open the gap on the cobblestones, we're only 25 miles or so from the finish, then he might well get this stage. That would be an incredible result for Canada.
Well, these guys here are already panicking because they, you know, when a rider like Hainaut attacks, you really need to be on the wheel. You really need to be in his slipstream, because then trying to close down the gap is a very tall order. He's around about 1.2 kilometres now, Phil, to go to the next section of cobblestones, which is that section I was just talking about at Rogny. It's only 700 metres long, but look at Pavel Brut. He is a brute because he's nailing back rider Hainaut centimetre by centimetre. Oh,
there's been a crash here right through the hedges here.
Yeah, looking down there, I can't see any of the big names involved, but this is at the back end of the main field. The Lampre rider who's gone down there is, in fact, Adriano Malori.
This is Bellotti. There's a sprinter who's gone down for leaky gas, so somebody's got too close to the hedge there. Maybe we can see it here. Oh, it's already happened, and well, Bellotti just saw it too late as he rode into them.
Yeah, this is at the back end of the pack, and again, this is why you have to ride at the front end of the main field. The Garmin rider who went down there was Dave Zabriskie. Yeah. It certainly hasn't been a great opening start to the Tour de France field. Pinego's gone down as well. Not a great start to the Tour for Garmin Transitions.
He was the best young rider in the race a few years ago. He's got a bit older since then, but he's never really enjoyed the Tour de France. He's been a winner of the Tour of Italy, but The Italians don't always ride well in the Tour de France. I don't know what it is. Maybe we don't serve enough spaghetti when we get into France, but they never ride well in this race, really.
Alessandro Pataki's riding quite well, wearing the green jersey. He's in around about 10th to 15th position, moving over on the right-hand side in the pale blue there. That's Linus Gerdemann. Sylvain Chavanel in the yellow jersey, looking pretty happy. Just telling Gerdemann, excuse me, get out of the way here. I'm quite comfortable.
Well, George Hincapie's sitting right up near the front in his USA Champions jersey, but Voigt is incredible. He's got control of the race again as we look here at the leaders.
Section number 3, the riders just starting. The sign across the road there indicating just 700 meters. This is not really a difficult section of cobblestones, I'd have to say, Phil. This is pretty much like a freeway.
Yes, well, they're going to make the most of it, these boys. They're just holding a 64-second advantage in the breakaway. Jens Voigt has got control. That's a very tight bend for the bunch to come round. Our boys have made it okay. They're being led by Roger Klug here, who is a first-timer in the Tour de France. Doesn't seem at all afraid of this. Big man, though, perfectly suited to a ride in the cobblestones. Won't be looking too much forward to the Alps, though, because that's a big body to climb up the mountains in a week's time.
He's a great bike handler, too. You might just see him. He's getting right over to the right-hand side of the road, and those are very smooth cobbles on the right-hand side of the road that he's flicking in and out of. He's trying to make sure he doesn't hit those drainage grids, because that could cause a little bit of consternation for him, but he has kept the pace nice and high off the cobblestone sections now. In about, well, I would say, Phil, they're not too far away from crossing into France, because at 39.5 kilometers to go, they should be crossing the French border.
I think this is the border town, but whether we'll actually see the border post, now there's a question, because these days we virtually just merge and that's about it. You sometimes don't even know till you check the car registration plates. Here's Stuart O'Grady, brings the bunch around that corner now nice and safely. Again, checking out where the Schleck brothers are, because they're the men he's pacing for, trying to guide them a safe course through the cobblestones. O'Grady, an Australian winner, the first one ever of the Paris-Roubaix Classic.
Well, it looks so far as if none of the big heads of state of this race have been caught out by the early sections of cobblestones. They have some respite now, Phil, for around about 10 kilometers. But then after that, the cobblestones are going to get thrown at them every 5 or 6 kilometers. And that's where it's going to start to break. If anyone will crack, it'll be then.
So as the field continue now, this is life at the back here, but no number 1, so that's okay. This is De La Fuente, number 2 here on the same team as Alberto Contador. The gap is collapsing now, 56 seconds and coming down. 38 kilometers to go to the finish. We'll take another short break and we're heading towards the 4th sector of cobblestones of 7, and we won't be too far away when you come back. We'll see you in just a moment. Well, the cobblestones of France are going to come thick and fast right now. We've just literally a moment ago entered France from Belgium, where we'll stay now. Bob Roll, by the way, was spotted riding his bike on the cobbles this morning, but now he's sat upstairs with Craig Hummer. What's on the show tonight, boys? Keep smiling.
We are indeed, as are you, because this is the stage we've all been waiting for. You mentioned Bob on the cobbles. He'll be talking about the cobbles in our Head Sweats Ask Bob Key segment. We're also going to have a feature on the best American cobble rider ever, George Hincapie, and we'll have a special guest. Jonathan Vaughters will be with us.
Well, let's hope that Jonathan might have something happy to say, because who knows, Tyler Farrar still in this group despite his injuries today. It is a sprint finish, I think, if this group picks up those 7 leaders. There's the flag of France. We've literally come in the last kilometre. There was no big fanfare, no big border. We just realised we'd just entered France from Belgium. Cervelo here, who are trying to work this race now primarily for Thor Hushovd, who is holding about 4th wheel in the red jersey as champion of Norway. 48 seconds the gap. These boys are racing now to sweep everybody up. I don't think the organisers expected this race to come down as a big group brunch sprint. I really don't, but it might well be the way it is going to work out if they wipe out those 7 leaders 49 seconds in front. Now, don't miss an all-new Daily Line on Versus Live tonight at 11. Liam and the gang will break down all the stories you need to know, and Jen has all the best from the blogs. Rob will break down the numbers, and Reese drops the hammer on the biggest stories from the night in sports. That's the Daily Line live tonight at 11 here on Versus. That'll bring you all the sport up to date, and who will they be talking about having won today's stage of the Tour de France? Tight left-hand bend for the rise. They continue now as we continue to gaze around the shadows. We're going to take a break now because we're packing them in, so we'll give you the rest of the program commercial free over the cobbles. See you in a moment. Welcome back, and here's your Pacific Life race update here as the riders continue. The peloton is still fragmented just a little bit. They're flying across the plains now as they're heading towards the next sector of cobblestones. Look at the work being done at the front. Armstrong is right up there, by the way. So too is Contador. Now, Robbie Ventura is out and about this morning. He's on the cobblestones, and he's going to tell us what we're in for as we get towards the finish of the race today. Let's rejoin now Robbie Ventura.
The riders here at the Tour de France are obsessed with weight. They're trying to save as many grams as they can on their bikes, on their equipment, even on their own bodies. Because we all know that the lighter the athlete is, the faster they're going to go uphill. Today's stage is totally different. It's all about the cobblestones. And today is a day for the big man. The guy who can push that big gear. The guy who can balance themselves properly on the bike. And weight helps you do all of those things. I talked to the manager of Quick-Step before the start, and I said, what advice do you give the little guy, the guy who doesn't have any experience? How do you make him go fast today? He looked up at the skies and said, say a lot of prayers.
Oh, well, that about sums it up, Robbie, I think. And there's a few guys saying the prayers right now. Saxo Bank have really got control of the head of this race. Cancellara will be pleased with the way things are going just now. Well, it seems to be Saxo Bank and Cervelo are trying to control this race. The Stars and Stripes, the American champion George Hincapie has been such a hero in the recent Paris-Roubaix. He's seen the good side of that race and the podium. He's seen the bad side from inside a ditch when he was almost on the podium a few years back.
Well, here he's looking after the interests of Cadel Evans, and what a man to take you into the cobblestone sections, because he's probably one of the most experienced riders when it comes to Paris-Roubaix. And these next two sections of cobblestones, Phil, that we're going to go into, Sarcey-Rosier and Tillouel-les-Marchiens, they are definitely sections that are used in Paris-Roubaix. Not all of the main field are there, but nearly all of the main contenders are still present and correct in this leading group. But between Cervelo Test Team and Saxo Bank, they are throwing everything at this race this afternoon. You can see that Saxo Bank have done about 66% of the work. Cervelo Test Team, 34% of the work. There's nobody else wants to try just yet.
And right now it's two riders of Cervelo who are on the front here, and one of those workhorses is the British rider, Jeremy Hunt. The tricolor jersey there is the champion of Luxembourg, Frank Schleck. The yellow jersey is the Frenchman. He's on French soil now. The striped jersey is the world champion, Cadel Evans. The one on the left there is the champion of Norway. They're all up here now. And that's Armstrong, number 21, moving into position. We are about 2 kilometers from the stretch of cobbles. It is time for panic. Well, as we look here at the Radio Shack tracker, that really is a mouthful, you know. But anyway, he's pointing out Lance Armstrong, who's just rapidly scuppered up the outside, and George Hincapie here as well. Hincapie's holding a perfect position, but he's thinking of Cadel Evans, who is in the race alongside him, slightly ahead of him, off to the right there at the moment, number 121. So George will want to keep an eye. We're going into the stretch of cobblestones now, known to all of these riders on Paris-Roubaix. They know what happens on these stretches. Now, quickly, a quick reminder to join in our Cadillac Lead the Pack sweepstakes. You go to versus.com/lead the pack. Do it every day. You could be with us on the 2011 Tour de France. You could have a Cervelo R3 bicycle or the leader's jersey of the Tour. The code word today is cobblestones, and you must check online every day to work it out. We'll give you a new password every day. Back to the action, gazing now. Look at the face there, the maillot jaune, Sylvain Chavanel. You're not going to take that jersey off his shoulders without a fight. This man is a man of northern France. He knows these roads. They're his roads. There's one of the giants of the area here, of the Nord Pas de Calais. We'll take a break. Rejoin us for Life on the Cobbles.
Alert for people using the drug Avanti.
Welcome back, and this has just happened as they enter the cobblestones. We believe Frank Schleck is the rider lying in the road. Literally just happened here. I think David Miller has been delayed by a crash as well as they came onto the cobblestones, and that looks like Frank down there, and he does not look good at the moment. Let's hope he is okay. And is that Contador who's walking away? I couldn't quite see the rider just then. We need to get down closer to have a look here. But there's a lot of riders down. Matti Breschel is down there. Frank Schleck, I think, has hit his head here as he lies on the cobbles here. Well, we might be able to see this. It was not good for Frank Schleck, Paul, as we look down. That is Schleck there as the rider comes into the back of him. I think David Miller also involved off to the right.
Well, Phil, I tell you what, that crash was right at the front end of the main field. He was riding superbly there, and he was well placed. Then all of a sudden, he lost it over on the right-hand side of the road, and now the cobbles can be just as slippery in dry conditions as they are in wet conditions. This is another group trying to come by here while the race is completely hammering at the front end. Hincapie's got a problem over there on the left-hand side. He's had a front-end tyre burst out, and he's trying to get himself back in. There is Contador in this next group as well.
Alberto Contador gritting his teeth as the flags of Brittany are waving here now on this stretch of cobblestones in France. The boys will have heard the tangle of metal, and that will have caused them just to turn the screw a little bit tighter now. That's Contador reaching across. The riders here are now all under 100% pressure.
Fabian Cancellara is on the front here. I did notice that with Contador, he was with Bradley Wiggins, so he's got a man to try and pace him back into this race if at all possible. But Fabian Cancellara is putting the hammer down this afternoon.
Going to do now? Last time he heard a teammate was in trouble, he stopped the race, and that's what happened yesterday. Now he's got Schleck lying on the road, and he's pushing it on.
One Schleck, he's still got Andy Schleck up there with him. He did say today, we are going to race this race. Today was a sad day. Today is a day to race. Today is a race for men to go out there and give them some pain. There's Luis Leon Sanchez looking at the faces of the riders in this group. There is Alberto Contador.
Yes, and there is Lance Armstrong too, who's riding very... No, it's not Armstrong. It is Gregory Rast, in fact, the bigger boy of the team, who's sitting up there. We need to check out where Armstrong is at the moment. The pressure has been applied here. Now, is that Lance Armstrong as he's trying to get across the gap?
Popovic was the next man in line there. I would expect to see Armstrong somewhere.
Radio.
Fabian Cancellara is sitting at the front here. He's not taking any prisoners here this afternoon. In the group with him, of course, I just noticed there was Thor Hushoff, and I've got a funny feeling I may well have just seen Cadel Evans in that group too.
Well, there is Lance Armstrong now trying to recover just a little bit here as they're slightly detached from the cobbles by Armstrong. Now, Cancellara is in a quandary here. The radio will tell him he's not going to wait this time out, though, as he's now signaling to the riders to start working here because Andy Schleck is with him. Time to gain ground. The champion of Norway is here. Cadel Evans is here. These are favourite riders who will not wait now. They must push on.
Geraint Thomas is in that group as well, the Great Britain, the national champion of Great Britain. Armstrong, I think, is in the second group. The other rider with him there is Johan van Summeren. But this is everybody trying to scramble back into this bike race. We'd forgotten about the front end of the race because this is Ryder Hezerdahl.
Hezerdahl is out on his own as the next sector of cobblestones now trying to turn a big gear. Now Armstrong is trying to bridge to that front group which contains Schleck and Cadel Evans as the leading contenders. A chance to gain time over Contador. Schleck will not turn this down right now.
Well, just trying to look back over the top of the camera bike here, but somebody has got in the way. But that was a well-planned move there by Team Saxo Bank and Frank and Andy Schleck. Sadly, though, for Frank Schleck, he's down on the ground. We have no information about him. But for the moment, Fabian Cancellara, well, he's got all three of those motors turning very fast again, Phil. I hope he's got plenty of AAA batteries to keep the wattage up.
Well, indeed, as they continue, Cancellara, Andy Schleck, Cadel Evans, Thor Hushoff are driving at the front. Four of the strongest bike riders in the world suddenly projected to the head of the peloton. But it's the Canadian on Garmin Transitions, Ryder Hezerdahl, who's trying to strike out for the lone win. He's 24 kilometres or 15 miles from the finish now. This is the elite leading group here. Now, is that Geraint Thomas who's got onto the back?
Yeah, that's Geraint Thomas, the champion of Great Britain, who's got onto the back of that group. Now, you can see the gap that they have opened, and it's quite an amazing gap. There's the second group on the road there. Looking down at that group, we're trying to identify who is in that group.
10 riders chasing here. They need to try and reach them. If they can get across here, we'll have a leading group of some 14, 15 riders.
That's Armstrong in that group. A little bit further back, you've got Mick Rogers in about 8th position, the tall rider from HTC Columbia. Armstrong, bear in mind, slightly injured, has got Johan van Summeren behind him, Jaroslav Popovic behind him as well. And he's giving everything to try and get back to Fabian Cancellara, but that's a tough call to try and pull back the man who this year won the Tour of Flanders and won Paris-Roubaix.
Well, this morning, Contador said, I'm not losing any sleep over today. I'm not worried about it at all. Well, he should get a bit worried now as the camera pans down down. He's in this group somewhere. Armstrong is in the chase group and trying to bridge the gap to those 5 leaders. There's Contador now right in the centre of our picture. There's still time to repair the damage, but there's also time for Armstrong's bunch to reach the leaders. And Geraint Thomas has done an incredible ride for Sky. He's with the leaders.
He certainly is.
Well,
There's
the leaders
Bradley
of the peloton.
Where's Bradley Wiggins in that group as well? Contador comfortably right. Look at Contador arriving comfortably over the cobbles now, and he's done an excellent job today because this is certainly not his terrain. He's never been and raced over these cobblestones. Yes, it's good to come and look at them and ride over them at 38, 39 kilometres an hour, but when you start to ride over them at 45 or 50 kilometres an hour, Phil, that's a completely different ball game.
This is Ryder Hagedal now, the Canadian who is pushing on here and riding the cobblestones. Well, another Canadian once rode pretty well on Paris-Roubaix, Steve Bauer. He lost it by the narrowest margin in history when he was beaten by a centimetre in Roubaix. It would be a fitting result if a Canadian won today, that's for sure. The field trying to regroup. This is the main body of the field. I honestly don't know how much of that original breakaway of 7 is left out front right now.
Well, once we get off this next section of cobbles for Ryder Hagedal, we've got, I suppose you could say, some respite, because he's got about 5 kilometres of smooth road before he comes to the next section of cobbles, which is another long section at 3.7 kilometres long, and that is going to be a real leg bender.
That is a long, long way, and it comes just 10 kilometres from the finish when they come off those cobblestones. And that will take us down towards the end now. And the world champion is there. Sylvain Chavanel is the rider who's also up in the front. But Geraint Thomas, proudly wearing the white jersey of the British champion, left of our picture here, has done the ride of his life to reach these boys. He sits on the accomplished wheel of Thor Hushoff, the champion of Norway, and they both in turn sit on the wheel of the world champion, Cadel Evans, the first Australian to wear the rainbow jersey. And the work being done is Cancellara and Andy Schleck. This is an incredible race now, and Cummings is back here with them. Well, that's Steve Cummings now, so they've wiped him out in this extremely elite group. Geraint Thomas wanted that drink, but it didn't get it. As he continues on now, we've got these 6 riders trying to chase. We've got Ryder Hagedal up front. I really don't know, but I think all the rest of the breakaway have been blown away now in the sudden action. This is a big move here by Andy Schleck after yesterday standing on the descent of the Stocker, looking as though he had broken bones. Now in this major escape here that could put seconds into Alberto Contador. Remember that Schleck has a very bad time trial to remove from his record. He lost over a minute in the prologue time trial to the winner, Fabian Cancellara. Well, as we see the real men in action, don't forget that we have our Fans Fantasy Cycling. It's back with the Progressive Fantasy Cycling Challenge. You could win a VIP trip to the Tour next year. Plenty of other prizes. Pick your team of Tour riders. Get familiar with the game, because tomorrow the game gets serious. You sign up at versus.com/progressive. Choose your team. Better put Andy Schleck in it right now, I would think. As the riders continue on, that is where we're going. The cars are already coming in. As you see, it's a slightly downhill finish. The crowd are ready now. They're approximately 40 minutes from the finish. No further news yet on Andy Schleck. We'll take our last break before we take you to the finish. See you in just a moment. Welcome back as we look at the leader on the road today. This is Hagedal trying to hold off a chasing group of Andy Schleck and Armstrong a minute behind this man on the road at the moment. But they all are closing in on one another right now. And this is the 6th sector of cobbles. One more afterwards. Well, the big shoulders here of Ryder Hagedal, the 29-year-old Canadian who rides the American Garmin Transitions, the same team as the British rider David Miller. He's taking his moments here. It's a long, long section, this, and behind there could well be more damage done. He's pushing a huge gear.
Well, it's a good 2-mile section, 3.7 kilometres long, and again it's Fabian Cancellara has gone to the front of this group, and he's flying over the cobblestones. You have to be a specialist at this kind of cobblestone riding if you want to stay in the race. And Alberto Contador, Phil, is riding himself back into this event. He's taken on the hell of the north, and he's handling it fairly well.
Contador is trying to leapfrog the groups here. This is the group Armstrong. Contador is now part of it as he brings the rest of the troops across, and they they still have not contacted. They're about 30 seconds behind the Andy Schleck group, but it's still within their sight. And this is a long section of cobblestones here.
It is a very long section of cobblestones. Jaroslav Popovic there looking over his shoulder, trying to ascertain exactly what is going on this group. He wants to know where his team leader is, Lance Armstrong. I can see Bradley Wiggins is down in this group, and he must be fairly happy with his team at the moment, because they've got two riders in the leading group just above the road who are chasing Ryder Hagedal, Steve Cummings, and of course the man who is the champion of Great Britain, Geraint Thomas.
Well, the helicopter trying to give you a relationship of the gaps there as the peloton. This is the lead part of the peloton. Remember, Cancellara, Evans, Steve Cummings, Andy Schleck, Geraint Thomas and Thor Hushoff. They're up ahead of this group, but not by very far. And the man rushing towards the finish in desperation is Ryder Hagedal. And it will be a terrific result for the Canadian. The closest he would ever have come to a classic win until then was a fine ride this year in the Amstel Gold Race, where he was second.
That was a great performance by Hagedal, coming up to the top of his form this year, and he certainly is turning out to be extremely tough as a bike rider. This is the second group at the road, 10 miles left to race. Fabian Cancellara not thinking at all about his own personal performance here this afternoon, Phil. For him, the most important thing is to ride for Andy Schleck and try and put some time between Andy Schleck and Alberto Contador. The race is completely split to pieces here, and as you can see, there are no team cars behind. The team cars are long way back in the race this afternoon, maybe 3 or 4 minutes behind any of these riders.
But with these tyres pumped up like this, there's no easy way over the cobbles. You simply pedal as hard as you can and as fast as you can. But there's always the risk of a compression puncture as the cobbles bite out at those small tyres. And they're going to have to live with that fear now to the finish. There's no help for them here. And so Ryder Hagedal is going for gold on his own. He's just holding on. In fact, they're not getting any closer at the moment. He's holding around about 37 seconds.
He's just locked in at that half-a-minute mark. And this is actually Lance Armstrong here, and I think he's actually suffering to stay in contact with the group. He's got with him Jaroslav Popovic, and he may well have been popped off the back of that group. Although he started riding well on the cobblestones, now he may be losing a bit of time.
He looks very good, in fact, but he's been unhitched by the acceleration of that bunch, and Popovic will try to nurse him through, because there might be an easing of the breakaway once the clear of these roads. But this man's hoping there will be, at least, because he's about 15 kilometres from the finish now. But at the moment, it looks as though Armstrong is just trying to hold that group in sight.
No, he's just going to sit on the wheel of his teammate there, Jaroslav Popovic. Popovic is a very experienced rider, and as you can see, Armstrong may well have had a mechanical incident there, Phil, because he's got a different front wheel on the front there, and the yellow jersey too has a problem.
And the same problem, a front wheel here for Sylvain Chavanel. Desperate moments, but no need to absolutely panic yet. A bike change quickly from his team car as he gets back in the action. I hope it was from his team car, otherwise there will be problems.
Well, Andy Schleck, Fabian Cancellara around that corner with the world champion, Cadel Evans. Evans riding extremely well. He will have been helped by his teammates to get himself into the right position this afternoon. But for Sylvain Chavanel, he's got to get himself back into a group to try and conserve his lead in the overall classification. Started this morning with a fairly good buffer, a buffer of around about a 3-minute mark. But you know, on these cobbles, 3 minutes can get blown away very easily.
Well, he's got his bike changed there, but it doesn't look like a team bike to me. And, you know, if it's not, they may have to disqualify him.
It was a team bike. It was a team bike because before he was riding on a yellow jersey bike, which was the special bike that they had for him for today.
Thank
and before that, he had a black and white Eddie Merckx bike. So that will have been the bike he rode on yesterday.
Then the team car, and amazingly, must have been right behind him. We're seeing Lance Armstrong right behind his teammate Jaroslav Popovic here, is trying to pull him back into the action here. And the group is building, to say the least. There are 5 of them now as they try to chase. And they're completely spread across the countryside here now in the Department of the North, as they're trying to just dodge these cobblestones as best we can. This is the elite group in pursuit of the leader, Hagedal, and 3 champions, a world champion, 2 national champions, and 2 riders from Saxo Bank who have both been national champions themselves, and they're driving to get time over Contador.
Well, that's the goal this afternoon. That's what they said they wanted to do. This is the next group on the road. You can see there's George Hincapie. He had a front wheel puncture as well, so that's why he's stuck in this group a little bit further down in the main field. But the gaps are going to be quite interesting this afternoon. There is the Barredo going through there for Quick Step Schlepp. He's riding up at the front end of the main field, trying to identify a couple of riders there. I think that was Andreas Kloden going through for Radio Shack.
And there are the team cars right behind that group, so they've got a big enough lead over the rest of the race. I'm still not absolutely convinced exactly where Lance Armstrong is here, but his teammate is doing all the work he can to pull him back up towards the front of the race. Well, and it's becoming into a long and lonely road here, because there is the group, and that is the group of Contador, who's gone up the road ahead of him.
Well, I think Armstrong had a mechanical incident. That group seems to be slowing down a fraction. They're going to have to get themselves organised if they want to pull back a flying Fabian Cancellara, who is flying again and putting the pressure on. He's looking for the victory here this afternoon, and now Thor Hushovd is in a bit of difficulty trying to get across the gap there. Andy Schleck, the man who we expect to ride well in the big mountains, Phil, there, is in fact getting onto the back end of this group, and he's making a big operation this afternoon. He's pulling himself back up in the rankings.
29 seconds this group is behind Heyerdahl. It's hardly moved an inch now, but what he's doing is, I think Andy Schleck said to Fabian, try for yourself here, but Thor Hushovd is wise to the move this time around, doing a lot of solid work to bring back Fabian Cancellara. Evans will just follow the wheels at the moment, but this is a huge result for Cadel Evans and for Andy Schleck. It's time that counts in the Tour de France, and Schleck is in trouble. He is dangling at the back here.
We didn't make one quick calculation there, Phil, because the best placed rider overall in this group just happens to be Geraint Thomas. He started the day in a very good 6th place in the overall standings. Now, all of the riders in front of him in the standings are currently behind him on the road. We could actually have a British overall leader at the end of the day if the race was to stop like this.
Well, we've got to have a gap of over 3 minutes over the yellow jersey, so it might be... what's happened here? This is another crash. Is it Jürgen Rollins has gone down here at the... He's just overshot that bend. Let's have a look how he did it. Oh, ouch.
No, he just actually dropped it in the corner. He was trying to change his line. He was on the inside of the wheel of the rider in front, and his wheels just slipped from underneath him. He was a rider in the breakaway just the other day. Now, this is the next group on the road, trying to pull themselves all back together.
Absolute chaos out here at the moment. Juan Antonio Fletcher here and Thomas Lockfitz of Team Sky in that group as well. Desperate times in the Tour de France. The riders will all be complaining if they're not in the prize money today. The course was too hard. Of course, the winners never complain. As we see Alberto Contador down there, he's been extremely good on the cobblestones today. He really has. He got off to a bad start on them, but he's put matters to right very, very quickly.
Well, he's got with him Denny Menchoff, the leader of Team Rabobank, moving up there, and he's also got alongside him one of his own teammates to keep the pace nice and high. Contador, I think, will be breathing a sigh of relief at the end of the day this afternoon. Fortunately for him, for the moment, he hasn't had any mechanical problems, any mechanical incidents at all. And it looks as if he's got Alexander Vinokourov at the front of this group, who's doing the job of the Team Domestique here this afternoon.
Just noticed Nicholas Roach here. There he is, creeping into our picture, the son of Stephen Roach, the former winner of this tour, the only Irish winner as well. He's onto that group as well now. Lance has got himself still the pacemaker, but there's others in this group. These are moments. Lance, don't forget he crashed yesterday. He might be a bit pained from that, but he will lose his 5th place overall if he doesn't close the gap towards that front group.
Well, it's a bit chaotic at the moment, but I would say we're still looking at Ryder Heyerdahl leading this race just ahead of a group of 6 with Schleck and Cancellara. The next group on the road will be with Van Summeren and Lancaster a little bit further back. Armstrong, I think, is looking for around about 1 minute and 42 seconds, and he's roughly 45 seconds. Well, now he's gone to 1 minute behind the group of Alberto Contador.
That gap is not catchable today. Armstrong's got to limit his losses now, and this man here is about to enter the last segment of cobblestones. It is an absolute brute, as 10 kilometers to go now, so the cobbles are waiting just around the corner for Ryder Heyerdahl. And as I say so often, when you get a man that tries so hard, it's now we rather hope he wins. Here we go, 2.3 kilometers.
Strange the way history can repeat itself. Yesterday, the breakaway went at 17 kilometers in the race, and it survived all the way to the finish for Sylvain Chavanel. This man got into the break today at 13 kilometers into the race, and he goes under that 10 kilometer to go banner with an advantage of around about 20 seconds over Cancellara, Andy Schleck and Thor Hushovd.
Just in the distance is in fact Heyerdahl, but it looks to me as though Andy Schleck has found his 2nd win there. This chase group also is getting very, very close to that very elite group containing the world champion Cadel Evans and Nicholas Roach, number 81, tagged onto the back here, sitting on the wheel of no less than Alberto Contador.
Well, this is a great ride by Alberto Contador, and if he can ride like this over the cobbles, if he can ride a great prologue as he did around the streets of Rotterdam, he's going to start to lay down the foundations, Phil, for a win number 3 in the Tour de France to go back-to-back with his victory of last year.
Well, this is the lonely life of Stefan Ogier, who is in that breakaway, will do nothing more than just hang on to the back of the Armstrong-Kloden pair there. They're trying to reach them. The time is running out for them. 9 kilometers to go for the rider at the front as we speak, and these boys well, it's really down to the work of 2 men, Andy Schleck and Cancellara. They are towing this group along, and they are trying to reach rider Hagedal here, and this is just 9 kilometers from the finish of the race. Here comes the Armstrong group. It's a big gap, this. They're under the 10 kilometers to go board, but they're losing ground, Paul.
Yeah, but what a job being done there by that man wearing number 28. Jaroslav Popovic is burying himself for Armstrong this afternoon. That's what the cobblestones are all about, though. It's a question of survival. It's every man for himself. You have to ride as well as you can, and Armstrong will not give up. He's a great competitor, a great challenger. Popovic says, hold on, mate, wait for me. I can still help you a little bit on the run in towards the finish.
The power of Armstrong as he starts to stamp on those pedals. He's desperate now. He's got across. He always has loved riding the cobblestones. He goes so well on them. And now it's all down to him. Him against the boys up front.
Well, he's looking for a minute to try and pull back to Alberto Contador, who's in the next group on the road ahead of him currently. And that group is trying to pull themselves back to the group of Andy Schleck and Fabian Cancellara. What a pursuit on the run in towards the finish. There's the yellow jersey, Sylvain Chavanel. He's in a group a little bit further back, and I haven't got a time check to his group, but he started the day with a 3-minute buffer. He could lose that on this final section of cobblestones. There is Jérôme Pinault, the King of the Mountains leader, and Tony Martin as well, the best young rider in this race.
Well, these are big moments for him as he tries. The other big problem now, when you're not the leaders on the road, you're in the dust, and it gets into the eyes, and it is most painful as the eyes start to water. But down there, this very, very select little group of riders, but they still can't nail back rider Hagedal.
Well, Hagedal is doing the ride of his life. He's looking now for around about 15 seconds. I think they may well nail him back here, though, Phil, because here he is getting his way through this tunnel of noise. The crowds that have turned out in this northern part of France at the moment. The gap is being now communicated at just 15 seconds to rider Hagedal. Once he comes off this section of cobbles, it's flat all the way down to the outskirts of Arenberg and the forest.
Well, this has been a ride of his life, and he's done a couple this year, Hagedal. But once he's off these cobblestones, he'll be left with about 7 kilometers to race. Now, what's happening?
Chavanel's got another problem.
And another change of bikes here for the Maillot Jaune. Well, the curse of being the leader of the Tour. He wears the red number as yesterday's most aggressive rider. He's in the yellow jersey. He's back on his French roads, and he's been dealt cards like this. Well, but he's got to keep fighting, Paul. He hasn't lost that jersey yet.
He has not, but he will keep fighting all of the way. And all of the good luck that he had yesterday, I think, has turned around into bad luck here this afternoon. That was the group of Alberto Contador. This is the next group on the road here, and it looks as if this is the Contador group. And they're only looking for 36 seconds to rider Hagedal. They're only looking for 15 seconds to Andy Schleck.
Well, 37 seconds we could see a coming together of that group, and that will only serve to open up the gap back to Lance Armstrong. Look at this again as we now see Hagedal in the sights. Well, what a sad sight, I have to say. 6.5 kilometers to go, and Hagedal is about to be joined, and when he sees the quality of the rider who is pinging him back, he won't be surprised.
In that group, just doing a big turn on the front, was the world champion Cadel Evans, quite happy to swap turns with the 2 riders from Saxo Bank. The man who is looking now at the possible victory of this stage is Thor Hushovd. He will be very comfortably in that group and be very happy at the end of the day, because his team did a lot of work yesterday to try and get himself a stage victory, and they've done almost the same amount today.
Flags of the world flying on this corridor here of Section and Havely. The Australian flag also there, so they're going to be pretty pleased to see Cadel Evans, the world champion, paying justice to that jersey as the first Australian world champion.
Well,
and look at this, in amongst the cars here is the figure of Armstrong. He looks like the coal miner from the forest of Arenberg. He's totally black in the face.
He's fighting to keep himself in this Tour de France, his last Tour de France now, as we look at the front end of the main field. Fabian Cancellara, again, no prisoners in this one. He's just doing the pressure, keeping the pace as high as possible. All he's thinking about is Andy Schleck. Andy, we've got to try and get some time on these flat stages to try and keep you in with a chance of winning the Tour de France this year.
Andy lost 66 seconds to Cancellara in the time trial. More importantly, around 45 seconds to Contador. He's going to take it back today, and so they'll go equal to the mountains next weekend, and that's the intention. And Cancellara, unselfishly, is dragging his team captain along.
Well, the group Contador is only looking for 38 seconds from the front of the race. Now, who would have thought that on a race that's gone over some very difficult cobblestone sections? 8 miles of cobblestones, 13 kilometers in total, and still Alberto Contador looks extremely cool, calm and collected, hardly ruffled at all. He's had no bad luck on a day like this, and Phil, that is also a sign that you've got great form.
He'll be very happy tonight. He'll be very, very happy with the way things have gone. Johan van Summeren just in front of him. A lot of work being done by his team rider here.
Alexander Vinokourov.
Alexander Vinokourov, who won Liège-Bastogne-Liège this year. And he's just trying to keep Contador in a good place. Well, he's in a brilliant place right now. Well, Chavanel has gone through chasing, and this is the carnage behind here. There's Chavanel, the leader of the Tour de France. He's still got a chance to repair the damage. I'm not sure how much time he's lost. The clocks have blown up ages ago.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil. We could well be looking at a 3-minute loss for this man, Sylvain Chavanel, this afternoon. He's had 3 or 4 bike changes. This man, though, has done a great ride. He's fighting his way back into this race. He's lost his teammate, Jaroslav Popovic. He's riding now on his own. He's riding with his own courage, trying to ride himself back into that group. But he'll still be looking for a good 1 minute to pull himself back to Alberto Contador.
Well, Armstrong is crossing, and look at this. Because of the huge effort he made on those cobblestones, the referees are making him ride the gap. They've called the cars away from this group, but Armstrong is accelerating. You'll just shut your eyes, shut the pain out, and cross to that group. 4 kilometers to go.
This is the leading group. This is the group of the Schleck, Andy Schleck and Fabian Cancellara. Hushov's sitting there. He's waiting for the moment to pounce. He is the fastest man in this group, although I don't think that Geraint Thomas has ever come up against him in the sprint. Now, wouldn't that be a surprise?
Well, Geraint isn't a pure sprinter, and so I don't think he'll be winning the stage in this quality of a sprint finish. But watch out, because you're looking now at Cadel Evans here. The Maillot Jaune group is, how far was it, Paul? I missed it.
3 minutes and 25 seconds is the distance between the Sylvain Chavanel and the rest of the group. And at the start of the day, Geraint Thomas was looking for 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So currently, Thomas is looking at taking the overall lead in the race, Phil, by 5 seconds.
Well, that would be an incredible result for Geraint Thomas of Wales. He'd be the first Welshman ever to lead the Tour de France. Is it going to happen, as there's now been a move from the lead group here, and they're going to have to try and see what they can do about that?
Well, Armstrong has done a ride to get himself back into a group, and that was an extremely big effort by Armstrong. But now at the front end of the main field, we could be looking at a change in this race, because Geraint Thomas started the day looking for 3 minutes and 20 seconds behind Sylvain Chavanel, and at the moment Chavanel has been touched at 3:25 behind.
Well, Geraint Thomas last rode the Tour de France in 2007 for it was British registered, but it was a South African team, and that was Barlow World. And now, is he going to give Sky a brilliant result and claim yellow? That would be an amazing situation. The race has a habit of coming together towards the last, but not today. Everybody is at the limit of their ability now. 2.5 kilometers to go to the finish, which is about 1.6 miles. That is all. Cadel Evans on the front of this group here. A very elite group it is too.
You know, Cancellara here could be looking at turning the tables once again, because he was the man who had the yellow jersey yesterday. He was just trying to figure out how much time he needs. And at the end of the day, Fabian Cancellara could be riding himself back into yellow, having lost it today because of that little bit of a truce out on the open road. He's now got 3:37, so it looks to me as if Fabian Cancellara is riding himself back into yellow at the end of the day.
2 kilometers to go, and the computer will tell all when we get to the finish, but it is likely, unless there's a great return to the action by the Maillot Jaune, there will be a new leader in the Tour de France today. And I have to say it's down to the bad luck of the changes of bikes for poor old Sylvain Chavanel. But this has been not a battle for the yellow today. This has been a battle for the future in Paris. These leaders have got away from other big-timers. Bradley Wiggins losing time today. And so too Carlos Sastre, Lance Armstrong. Contador is losing time as well. Andy Schleck is playing a card along with Cadel Evans.
Well, Cadel Evans could be pulling himself back a good minute over Alberto Contador. That little bad performance he had in the opening day prologue time trial could be readjusted on the cobblestones of the north of France this afternoon. But I'd still have to say, Phil, this is a phenomenal performance by Alberto Contador, because nobody expected him to ride the cobblestones like he has done this afternoon. He's proving once again that he is a great champion.
And there he is, wearing number 1. He's been a 2-time winner of the Tour de France in the past 3 years, and Contador knows things are not a disaster for him today. He's not with Evans, he's not with Andy Schleck, but he is within touch, and that's all that matters until we get to the hills. 1,000 metres to the end. These boys are going to dispute the sprint finish. Cancellara, I think, has got to be spent. He's used all his energy to open the gap for his teammate Andy Schleck.
But you can see that Cadel Evans realises how important a move like this is, because Cadel keeps coming to the front, keeps riding, keep pushing as well, because he too knows that he is climbing up the overall classification on a day when he probably didn't even think that would be advantageous to him. But this has been a great day by Team Saxo Bank. Cancellara now keeping the pace nice and high, but watch out for Thor Hushovd. He's had an armchair ride here this afternoon with these great champions from Saxo Bank, and of course Evans.
Well, this has been a team attack. Saxo Bank came to this race today with the plan. We saw them all on the front when Stuart O'Grady and Jens Voigt were driving for them. They got the man they wanted in the lead, but what has happened to his brother Frank Schleck? He'll be very concerned about that as a rider, Hejjedal, goes on the left of our picture. And the quick chase, or was it a false start? A false start, I think. Andy Schleck is going to open it up. They've even put cobbles down the road here as we race towards the finish now. It is Andy Schleck on the right, Thor Hushovd on the left of our picture. His big Thor, the God of Thunder, going to fire again now. As he comes clear, he takes the stage. And in second place is Geraint Thomas. And in third place, the world champion Cadel Evans. What a ride by Geraint Thomas of Sky.
Brilliant ride by all of those riders. Saxo Bank laid it out this afternoon. This is Alexander Vinokourov now, and they are trying to make sure that their man Alberto... In fact, it looks as if Alberto Contador may well have been just dropped off on the run in towards the finish, but Alexander Vinokourov is digging very deep here to try and reduce the losses, but Contador got popped in the last couple of kilometres. There is Bradley Wiggins.
Well, Contador is actually towing away Wiggins for a few seconds advantage over Alberto, his teammate. And he really shouldn't be doing that, but he doesn't care as he pulls the group away here. Bradley Wiggins will take that with open arms. Denny Menchov in here as well as Alexander Vinokourov comes up. A little break for the line by Johan van Summen. Good ride by him. The clock continues to count. Take a look down the road here. So in the end, it wasn't such a great finish for Alberto, and the damage done by his own teammate. And this could be a tour where every second will count, Paul.
Well, I'm surprised at Alexander Vinokourov doing that, Phil. He may well have just been powering up to the finish and didn't realise that Contador had been dropped. Contador, though, now is safely home.
He's very annoyed.
He's not looking happy at all.
No, I think he's got a back tyre gone down on him there. Flat tyre, at least he got to the finish, unlike Chavanel with his bike changes. Keep your eye on that clock as the time ticks away. If it goes over about 3:40, 3:20, I've lost track now, 3:20, then we'll have a new leader today in the Tour de France. There's a big group here. Armstrong joined that group in the background. As far as I know, that's where he will be, as these riders continue to finish just ahead. 1:46 has gone now.
Well, this is the group. There's Armstrong over on the left-hand side, and you can see that Mark Cavendish is in the group with Alessandro Patacchi. There's not too many points left in this group this afternoon. The clock is not really important to this group, although Armstrong will be losing time to Alberto Contador and to Cadel Evans and to Andy Schleck. But what's more important now, Phil, as they cross the line at 2:07, is the time now back to Sylvain Chavanel. Now, looking down this long line, I wonder if Chavanel has managed to get himself into this group. I can't see a yellow jersey in it.
Well, and the thing is that Lance has lost over a minute to Alberto Contador as well, despite his flat tyre here. Contador has lost time to Andy Schleck and Cadel Evans. George Hincap in the Stars and Stripes finishes in this group. Looking over the back there, still no yellow jersey has appeared, and the clock has gone through 2.5 minutes now. This is his group. He really needs to step on the gas. He's got a very, very short chance. If he hasn't had the kilometre sign, he's lost it.
He just went through the final kilometre, and that was at a time of around about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and it's going to take him about 60-odd seconds to get to the finish from here. 2:52. It's ticking by for the man in the yellow jersey. What a tough day. He had such bad luck this afternoon, and I think it's just gone blown by.
Well, that is very, very sad. It's not over yet, but he hasn't got to the finishing line. He's looking for 2:57, his lead over Cancellara, so it has gone by. Fabian Cancellara will be the new leader of the Tour de France. He's reclaimed his jersey on the cobblestones. And poor old Sylvain Chavanel had a right to dream of leading this Tour for a few days, but he didn't write into the equation the bike changes on the Hell of the North. His teammate in the Mountains jersey on the right, Jerome Pinot, is staying in the group with him. A very, very sad way to end. He takes the lead in Belgium to come into France. He loses the lead in France.
Well, Phil, 3 bike changes for Sylvain Chavanel, and nobody would have expected to have that much bad luck. After the great performance he put in yesterday, you can see Jérôme Pinot is trying to drag him to the line. He had a 2-minute 57 buffer at the start of the day over Fabian Cancellara, but who would have expected a race like that? Stopping the clock 3:58, and they know they've lost it.
Yeah,
but the big questions tonight are going to be on board the Team Astana train, because why did Alexander Vinokourov ride like that when he popped Alberto Contador off his wheel?
I only can say it did look as though Contador did have a flat tyre, and he probably didn't know he dropped him, because at that crucial stage of the race he did not know that he tailed off his team leader. I'm going to speak in his defence until I find out something else. Well, these are the mine heads here, because just below us are the mines. They're no longer used, and just as you enter the forest of Arenberg here is a sign, a statue in respect of Jan Stablinski, the great world champion cyclist who lived in this region. And his famous phrase was, "I've worked on the top and I've worked on the bottom of this road." He was under the mines and he was on the cobbles of Arenberg in the Paris-Roubaix. Well, there we are. It's an incredible day in the Tour de France. Take your hats off to the riders. They gave it a terrific shot at racing today. And we're going to take a break, a few deep breaths, as we're trying desperately to work out. The great thing about live television is you haven't a clue where you are. But there's no doubt who won this race today. Thor Hushovd getting the win, and Alberto Contador unhappy. I'm pretty sure he had a flat tyre. We'll wrap it up soon. See you in a minute. Welcome back. Well, we're now on the outskirts of the Arenberg forest here. The Tour de France has had its day on the cobbles, and what a day it turned out to be. The yellow jersey of Sylvain Chavanel is no longer the leader of the Tour. Fabian Cancellara is back in yellow. Let's have a look how the day has run. The third day of the Tour, third stage, the fourth day. And the man in yellow was Sylvain Chavanel. Every right to feel things would go okay, but the cobblestones had other ideas. Lance Armstrong also up with the leaders in the early part of the day. No problems, it seemed, as they continued on the way. Same could be said too for Frank Schleck, the new champion of Luxembourg, despite the problems he had yesterday. Didn't count on a big attack, though, coming from Ryder Hagedal, because he was part of the 7-man group that got away after only 13 kilometres on the stage. The peloton treating the cobbles early on with some respect, but the cobbles not biting back. But then they did, as the crash first of all started on a clear, straight road. Somebody hit the sidewalk and took out some members of the peloton. Then came a crash on his own a little bit further on. Poor Simon Gerrans here of Team Sky took a wheel in his face, and Gerard Porte, the race doctor, had to dress him on the move. Then the serious sectors of cobblestone started to come thick and fast, and they were claiming big time. This, funny enough, came as they left the cobblestones. Riders crashing out there, all unhurt, but now the pressure was on. Saxo Bank were playing their cards. They were trying to move Andy Schleck to the front, while brother Frank was crashing on the left of the road. A sad sight indeed for the champion. He was down yesterday on the descent of the Stocker, and down here too, and I think a little bit stunned, and I'm hoping that he indeed has not broken back collarbone. The race continued on, and the leading group was forming. At the moment, no problems for Lance Armstrong, while out front now, the only survivor of that 7-man breakaway was indeed Ryder Hagedal. The Canadian on the Garmin transition team was trying to win. Armstrong had been split off of the lead part of the split in the peloton. He was now with Popovic doing all the pacing, who was trying to reach him up there, while a front wheel puncture for Sylvain Chavanel, the start of his troubles here. He was left behind. Armstrong was trying to get a little bit of respite, but Contador was up ahead, don't forget, and gaining time. More crashes. This time Jürgen Roland's going down, the rider who was in the breakaway yesterday. Into the corridor of the crowd, rider Hejerdal pushing for home. It was beginning to look as though he would make it. Meanwhile, still trouble at the back for the Maillot Jaune. Another bike. Take this one back. And then, just outside of the finish, 6.5 kilometres from the end, Hejerdal was picked up by the chasers of Cancellara, Evans, Cummings, Schleck, Geraint Thomas and Thor Hushovd. Armstrong had decided he had to go alone on that last stretch of cobblestone, and it was such a tremendous show of power, he did reach the next group in front of him. There they are, as he crosses the gap here, having left behind his faithful teammate. Dire straits. Then came the sprint to the finish, and Thor Hushovd, the God of Thunder, his second victory of the year, the first coming a week last Sunday when he became the champion of Norway. He was pretty praised with that one, especially after he might have won yesterday if the riders had decided not to race towards the end. Bradley Wiggins taking advantage of a late finish here. Vinokurov not realising he paced the group away from Alberto Contador. But Contador, I'm just trying to see his back tyre, you can see is all over the road. Alberto had a flat and he lost time in the last kilometre. The face of Lance Armstrong tells it all, a dark day indeed. He's lost a little bit of time. There's the stage result for you. And this is Hushovd on top, Geraint Thomas same time, Evans the world champion, Hejerdal the real champion of the day fourth, Andy Schleck fifth, big gains for him. Cancellara, this giant of a man from Switzerland, in the end still hung on for sixth. Van Summeren led home the chase at 53 seconds with Wiggins there as well, Jurgen van den Broek. And further down, Menchoff was in the group. Nicholas Roach done a great ride today, the young son of Stephen, the winner of the Tour back in '87. Contador, a minute 13 behind of the leaders in the end. So he wasn't too far behind the group in front, just 20 seconds there. Sanchez losing 1:46. Kreuziger in that group as well as Thomas Lukwitz of Team Sky. David Miller losing 1:46. Cholikin at over 2 minutes. Mark Cavendish in the top 25. Let's have a look if we can show you any more there, as Stuart O'Grady rode the race of his life as well. He was 26th, and the top 30 completed by Jakob Fuglsang, 2:08 for him. Armstrong losing 2:08, but that's on the winner. But still, he's lost about 3/4 of a minute on Contador. Let's have a look then at our Road ID ride of the day. Well, the pacemaking was done by the group. It would be so easy to pick out so many rides of the day from this front group. The unselfishness of Fabian Cancellara, but the big sprint on our Road ID ride of the day coming in from Thor Hushovd. The God of Thunder roars again here. The Norwegian delighted with this one. Remember, he won the green jersey for a second time in the Tour de France last year. And if you want to be a winner, just like Thor Hushovd, then head on over to roadid.com/TDF. A chance to win $13,000 in prizes, including a 2011 Trek Madone. Here he is on the podium. First chance he's had to show off his new national road jersey. He's won the title before. And his 8th career Tour de France stage win. Well, 8 stage wins, but that was one you'd always want to win one like that, wouldn't you, over those roads?
Well, most certainly. You know, he's a man who's always liked Paris-Roubaix as well. He's got himself onto the podium at Paris-Roubaix, and I think a bit of extra pride as well for him, Phil, by winning with his national champions jersey on. And as he said in the interview, well, I hope you don't see me in this again. I think that means he wants to stay in the green jersey right through till the end in Paris.
You might well be right indeed, Paul. Now, let's go to the Michelob Ultra overall standings. Have a quick look here. This will make interesting reading. Cancellara back in the yellow jersey. We thought he wouldn't see that again. Geraint Thomas, this youngster, in only his second Tour de France for Team Sky. Second place for him, 23 seconds. World champion Cadel Evans from the overall nowhere to third place now. Hejerdal, brilliant ride he did, kept him in fourth, brought him to fourth. Sylvain Chavanel sadly drops down to fifth. Andy Schleck up to sixth. He lost 1:06 in the time trial. He's 1:09 off Cancellara again. gain. Hushoff up to 7th, Vinokurov in 8th place, Contador in 9th, and that's a good place to be as we head down towards the hills. Well, not too much damage done at the moment, but Andy Schleck has done himself a world of good today. But this man, and I must confess, boy, I did not expect to see Spartacus back in yellow again this tour.
Well, no, I think it's very unfortunate for Sylvain Chavanel, who had so much bad luck piled upon him. There may well even be more incidents that he was involved in, but we actually saw 3 bike changes for Sylvain Chavanel, and you can't fight back from that.
Yeah, we did. But Geraint Thomas in 2nd place in the Tour de France, that's a ride for him too. So there's the mine heads there as we look down there. Now we've got all our reporters scurrying around out there because we're going to try and bring you interviews with Andy Schleck, we hope, and we hope also with Tyler Farrar, who's a limping member of the limping wounded family at the moment. So come back soon. Right at the entrance to the Forest of Arenberg, the riders will be rather pleased they never went into it today here in Arenberg itself, as we'll continue now with the prize presentations of the Tour de France after an incredibly fine, hard-fought last few kilometres today, which has made quite a few changes in the overall situation. Starting with this one, the winner today, Thor Hushovd. The points he's gained has given him the lead now in the green jersey competition. Welcome back, because the green jersey, he won it last year, having beat Mark Cavendish to it in Paris. And Thor Hushovd wanted to sprint yesterday, but the peloton said no. So they had no race for 2nd place, and he was absolutely furious when he finished with the riders. But it's all behind us now, because today the riders put on an incredibly good show. And as a result, Hushovd has got his green jersey. How long will he keep it? Who knows? But we won't be seeing him tomorrow in his Norwegian champions jersey. There's the lead over Geraint Thomas, the youngster from Wales in the United Kingdom, who sits in 2nd place. Chavanel is in 3rd in this now. He was the leader until today. McEwen is up into 4th, or stays in 4th. Cancellara in 5th there. There's a few more for you. Alessandro Patacchi has held it briefly with that 35 points, which was once the best, no more since then. Top 10 completed by Mark Renshaw, who had the 2nd place stage 1. King of the Mountain stays with Jerome Pino, despite the help he tried to give to his teammate in yellow, Sylvain Chavanel. But now Jerome Pino had to look after himself in the end. There was only one small hill at the start today, no points scored, but he had a big enough lead from yesterday to keep his overall lead. So Quick Step haven't lost everything today, that's for sure. You can hear the voice there of the most famous speaker in the world of cycling, Daniel Manjas. This is the overall situation. The King of the Mountains, Pino's only got 13 points, but it's good enough. Chavanel 2nd with 8. Taramay, these are the boys in the breakaway yesterday. And Matthew Lloyd completing the top 5. He was the King of the Mountains, by the way, in this year's Giro d'Italia, which is the first time an Australian has ever won the title in the Giro d'Italia. Well, I have to say, I'm very, very proud to see this, because this young man comes from Wales. It is Geraint Thomas. He has pulled on the leader's white jersey in the Tour de France now for Team Sky. Well, Paul, I'm making no apologies. I'm pretty happy for Geraint.
No, a great performance by him, and he probably along in that breakaway was having dreams of getting himself the yellow jersey, because it looked as if Fabian Cancellara wasn't riding for yellow. He was riding just to create as much of a time gap for him, for his teammate Andy Schleck over Alberto Contador, and he kind of re-inherited the yellow jersey by default.
Absolutely, but Geraint is up into 2nd place, about 23 seconds. We'll see that shortly off the overall race lead. Shakes hands with Bernard Hainaut. This is the young rider situation. He's now leading ahead of Andy Schleck. That's a big target, isn't it? Andy's 46 seconds back of him. Kreuziger sits in 3rd, but there's a gap there of 2 minutes. And top 5, Tony Martin at 2:12. Well, I am hearing now we can get down to the finishing line to Robbie Ventura. He's with Tyler Farrar.
You were in a difficult spot starting the day today. You didn't know how the arm was going to feel. Tell us what happened out there.
Yeah, to be honest, I can't believe I made it through. It definitely wasn't my funnest day ever on the bike, but somehow I'm still here, so I guess that's a good sign.
The fact that you made it through the cobbles, you got some flatter sprinting stages to come. Do you think you have a chance in contending in tomorrow's stage?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if I feel the way I did today, no. You know, like I said, I don't know how I even made it through the stage today. Hopefully, over the next few days, things will heal up a bit, and maybe by the 2nd week, I'll, feel like I can sprint again. But you know, right now I can barely pull on the handlebars with my left hand, so, you know, taking it one day at a time.
If you look at the bright side, it can't get any worse, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's all up from here, I think.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah.
Well done, Tyler Farrer. Tomorrow, Tyler, I assure you, it won't be as hard as it was today. You'll have your chance to recover, and you fight on in the true tradition of the Tour de France.
Well, I tell you what, Phil, it is a special race, and that's, I think, why he decided to try and stay into the race and battle to stay into the race. But what about his teammate, Ryder Hazeldal? He really had a day.
And we're going to find out now, because he's been voted the most aggressive rider of the day. He gets the red number tomorrow, and he was only 6 and a bit kilometres away from winning the stage. Terrific ride. Such a strong man over the cobbles today.
And it's because of his performance, really, that all the big time gaps were created behind, between Andy Schleck back to Alberto Contador, back to Lance Armstrong, back to Sylvain Chavanel, because they really had to pull out all the stops to catch this man, who again was in the breakaway from the 13th kilometre of the race.
And still finished in 4th place on the day, so they at least gave him the big prize there, which is voted by the journalists and members of the organisation. Back down there, because I think Andy Schleck is about to speak.
Andy, you started the day in a really, really tough spot. You managed to pull out an incredible performance. Did you expect this kind of ride out of yourself?
I felt pretty good today, and I knew I wasn't too bad on the stones. Even nobody believes in me.
Thank you.
Nobody believes that I can manage to go fast over the couples, but I think I showed today different.
Well done, Robbie Ventura, for keeping up there with Andy Schleck, but he pulled out something special even so.
He did pull something out special, but you know what? I tell you what, Fabian Cancellara is the man of the match for me, and forget about all those silly stories about having motors in his bike and all that stuff. He is just a big, strong bike rider, and when he gets the bit between the teeth, he can do almost anything on a bike.
Yeah, and Lance Armstrong today, we don't know if he had a problem yet. That will come out overnight, of course, and you can check on our website about all of that. But he really did show his strength. He had to rid himself of his teammate. He crossed that gap on the cobblestones like there was no tomorrow.
That was an angry Lance Armstrong pulling himself back into the Tour de France. Let's not forget, this is the last Tour de France that Lance Armstrong is going to participate in ever in history. He will do everything he can to pull himself back into this bike race. That's why he rode like he did today. A man possessed.
And Alberto Contador, we're waiting for confirmation, but I'm very, very sure he had a flat tyre there. And that's cost him a few seconds at the finish. And maybe Vinokurov didn't even know he wasn't sitting at the back of the group. He just tailed him off because he had a flat tyre.
I think in defence over the last kilometre or so, Alexander Vinokurov was probably just burying himself to make sure that he could reduce the time between himself and Andy Schleck with Alberto Contador. Contador probably just got popped off in the last corner. A little bit sad, but it's impossible to communicate sometimes, Phil, when you've got all the noise of the spectators and the excitement of having ridden over those dramatic 7 sections of cobblestones.
Well, you just can't work out where you are. That's the problem. You cannot work out where you are. Okay, well, let's have a look then at our Radio Shack route for tomorrow. A little bit easier, I have to say, and a chance for them to all lick their wounds after 2 days of really tough racing. The first week was always well publicised as a hard one. Tomorrow we get a normal day in the Tour de France. I must never say that. As we start to move now down French roads, heading towards the Alps. We'll be there at the weekend.
Well, moving away from Cambrai, a couple of sprints. Only one King of the Mountains point out on the course, and I wonder if the riders will have a chance to celebrate with some wine as we go into Reims, which is the capital of the Champagne region of France. Reasonably flat, 153 kilometres, a good day to recover.
Now, Reims is the way you say it in French, but obviously when we speak English, Reims is the more understood pronunciation of it. This is the Radio Shack route, and this is all about tomorrow. We go from Cambrai to Reims. It's 153 kilometres, not so far, 95 miles. Live coverage starts at 8:30 a.m. That's Eastern time, and as always, our prime time coverage comes to you at 8 p.m. in the evening. Well, don't forget, go to Versid.com. We give you all of our highlights there and exclusive content as well, things we can't show you all of the time. You can follow us on Twitter as well, and we're there at vscycling.com. We'd love to hear from you, by the way. Our clothing is, as always, provided by Izod. And congratulations to Thor Hushoff. We hope Frank Schleck is okay, and we'll update you as soon as we know as to what is going off there. It's been an incredibly good day of racing. Boy, the day does fly when you're enjoying yourself, doesn't it, Paul? As the Tour de France continues. So we'll all be back in action tomorrow. And now I'm going to say I hope Holland does well in the World Cup tonight, which will follow on television. So we'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye for now.